Run. The first reaction of the righteous experts was to flee. Their little bit of power was nothing in front of the ancient race experts. One of the feather race's experts suddenly shot an arrow, instantly killing a fleeing righteous expert. Even his spatial ring shattered with him. But once his spatial ring broke, 2 treasure items appeared in the air. According to reason, when spatial rings were destroyed, whatever was inside would be drawn into chaotic space and disappear forever from this world. However, treasure items were different. That person's treasure items were average, and their spirituality wasn't high enough. According to a human's intelligence level, low-grade treasure items were like fools. Originally, treasure items weren't things that could be stored in spatial rings that hadn't reached the treasure item level. But treasure items with low intelligence could be stored in a spatial ring. When a spatial ring broke, they would instinctively sense the danger and escape from it. After all, even if the treasure items were fools, they were still extremely powerful. But these 2 were clearly fools. After escaping from the spatial ring, they just floated there, not knowing what to do. The feather race expert was the fastest. His wings flapped, and he practically instantly took those 2 treasure items. He was delighted. As expected, the fastest way to get rich was to kill people and take their treasures. Seeing him obtain 2 treasure items just by killing one person, all the ancient race experts turned red-eyed. It had to be known that opening a coffin to obtain a treasure item took a great deal of time. But now it was too easy. He had obtained 2 treasure items in just a breath. All the ancient race experts roared and charged at the righteous experts like berserk beasts. Heavens, there's a barrier here. Fuck, what bastard set up this trap? Raged the righteous experts. At the same time, they suddenly thought of how when Shui Yu had been subduing the evil dragon Bone Claw, there had been dozens of people guarding him. Quite a few of them had slipped away like ghosts. Now that they thought of that, they immediately realized that it was the corrupt path's doing. They had long since placed their sights on them and set up this trap to take the treasures they had obtained. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, save us. Under the killing of the ancient race experts, the righteous experts were like fat sheep surrounded by hungry wolves. In their despair, the only thing they could do was beg Long Chen for help. You had a chance to save yourselves, but you gave it up. Who are you complaining to? If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves for acting like nothing matters unless it involves you. Yu Xiaoqian's voice resounded throughout. Even surrounded by corrupt experts, she still had it so easy. Her sword flew through the air, and even rank 3 celestials were unable to menace her. She slaughtered them, conveniently picking up their treasure items. Hearing her words, the righteous experts immediately despaired. They only had 2 rank 3 celestials, and they weren't even innate rank 3 celestials. In front of 8 innate rank 3 celestials and over 20 ordinary ones, they were like turtles trapped in a jar. Death was their only option. Bastard, how can you not help because of some little hostility? As a righteous expert, is your heart so narrow? When everyone's in a crisis, we should be united, shouted one of the righteous path's rank 3 celestials. He saw that Long Chen was fighting evenly against both Shui Yu and Yu Changhao. Furthermore, Yu Xiaoqian seemed to have it easy against the corrupt experts. If she came to help, perhaps there would be a bit of hope for them. Long Chen couldn't even be bothered to look at such a person. He just treated it as a dog farting. As for Yu Xiaoqian, she was so infuriated that she couldn't even speak. You fuckers, do you even have any face? They didn't speak, but one of the more easily angered fellows that Yu Xiaoqian had sent out cursed. Smoke was about to come out of his head. Fuck, when senior apprentice brother Long Chen asked you for help, you just stood by like you didn't even know him. Now he's fighting against 2 peak experts and you still want him to help you? And you want to play the moral game? Fuck your mother, are your heads full of shit? That angry fellow felt like he might explode. He directly went up to the barrier and smashed it, cursing. The other 2 hastily tried to pull him back, but they were one step too late. When he viciously smashed the barrier launched a counterattack that covered him in blood. But he still cursed them. This barrier was strange. The people inside couldn't see what was outside, but it didn't block sound. They clearly heard his cursing, and the sound volume was increased by 10 times. The righteous experts were speechless. They had previously sneered at the three of them for going to use Xiaoqian's aid, saying that once they were dead, they would make sure to bury their corpses. Now it seemed like they would become the corpses, and they wouldn't even have any corpses left. The ancient race experts were vicious, and they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. "Run to that woman," shouted a righteous expert suddenly. During this calamity, they wanted to borrow Yu Xiaoqian's power to relieve the pressure. Even if they couldn't escape, they could live a bit longer. Perhaps if something unexpected happened, they might be able to get away. "Abominable! These sons of bitches!" said the three people outside clearly. At the same time, they saw that more people had reached this place and were looking at the battle on the hill with shock. After all, this place wasn't very concealed. It was easy to find. There were already dozens of people around, and some had already activated photographic jades. Seeing the righteous expert's shamelessness, fury soared in Yu Xiaoqian's eyes. She had never seen such contemptible people. Although the righteous expert's idea was good, their power was lacking. In the face of dozens of rank 3 celestials, they were almost exterminated before they could arrive beside Yu Xiaoqian. The ancient races were also greedy fellows. In their eyes, the righteous experts were a flock of fat sheep. If they managed to reach the corrupt path that was fighting Yu Xiaoqian, then all the treasures would end up in their hands. So they were even more urgent than the righteous experts. A righteous rank 3 celestial had only just reached Yu Xiaoqian when a corrupt expert slashed his sword at him. He blocked that sword, but as a result, he was killed by an ancient race expert. The ancient race expert was extremely fast, instantly snatching that person's spatial ring. The corrupt expert glared furiously, but the ancient race expert laughed and ignored him. "The trash is cleaned up now. Hurry and capture that woman," shouted Yu Changhao. He and Shui Yu were unable to defeat Long Chen quickly. He was too strong, and his power seemed to be endless. Even 1 against 2 in such an intense battle, he didn't reveal the slightest opening. Each of his moves were fierce and powerful, and if they revealed an opening, they might receive a sudden attack from Long Chen. Shui Yu had fought Long Chen before, but now Long Chen was stronger than back then, so much stronger that he could barely believe it. But he had his own thoughts. He didn't go all out attacking. Instead, he was trying to familiarize himself with the evil dragon Bone Claw. Long Chen easily saw through Shui Yu's thoughts. As for that idiot Yu Changhao, he had been duped. He thought that Shui Yu was only at this level and he was fighting all out. The majority of Long Chen's attacks were blocked by him. Long Chen sneered and didn't expose him. Although Yu Changhao was powerful, he didn't have the slightest brains. He was just an arrogant idiot, and Long Chen continued to fight it out in terms of endurance. While Long Chen handled them, Yu Xiaoqian was completely surrounded by everyone. "Xiaoqian, go ahead and kill them all." Long Chen sent Yu Xiaoqian a spiritual message. Having received that, the runes revolving around Yu Xiaoqian's body suddenly changed. Divine light circulated, and her runes took the shape of a huge flower behind her. The experts attacking Yu Xiaoqian were startled. They had originally thought that Yu Xiaoqian was summoning a kind of manifestation, but they suddenly found that this flower appeared to be alive. The flower condensed onto Yu Xiaoqian's forehead. Her sword touched the center of the flower, and a terrifying light erupted. The flower's light was glaring and blinding. "Not good. Run." These experts finally realized something was wrong and hastily retreated. They sensed a terrifying pressure from that flower. The lotus flower lives in the mud. The hibiscus breaks through the water. The leaves grow, the flower blossoms, the pith condenses. Following Yu Xiaoqian's chanting, the flower rapidly blossomed, and the pith formed of runes appeared. It was dreamlike, and it was hard to tell if it was real or fake. World extermination hibiscus, bloom. The flower suddenly shook. The world instantly became still. Endless rainbow light suddenly erupted. It was beautiful and bizarre, instantly devouring everything within 100 miles. Anyone touched by that light had their body ripped to shreds. Blood filled the air, as if this was a hell on earth. What a terrifying attack! Even Long Chen was startled. Yu Xiaoqian was actually this powerful. This move of hers was truly terrifying, and most terrifying of all was how quickly she was able to use such a move. Other than a few rank 3 celestials that were still struggling, not a single rank 2 celestial survived. Furthermore, those rank 3 celestials had only managed to escape because they had treasure items protecting their bodies and had retreated fast enough upon sensing the danger. They hadn't been in the core region of her attack. However, other than the innate rank 3 celestials, the others were all in a wretched state now. Their bodies had been badly damaged, and they were horrified to find that their heavenly Tao energy was unable to heal these injuries. Underworld Soul Blood Curse. Suddenly, Shuiyu shouted. His third eye opened, and a blood-colored rune shot toward Long Chen. Long Chen tried to dodge when he suddenly found that space was locked around him. He couldn't move. Idiot, once you've entered my space-locking bow's force field, you can't get away. Yu Changhao's golden bow had suddenly grown to 300 meters long. Its countless runes lit up, shining on Long Chen. It was actually a spatial locking power. Long Chen could only watch as that curse rune shot toward him. Long Chen hadn't expected Yu Changhao to be able to use a treasure item to seal the space around him. This way, he was unable to dodge Shuiyu's curse. But he sneered and looked at Shuiyu. Idiot, you just had to wait until so many of your people died. Now you should know that foolishness comes at a price. Did you think I didn't prepare any defense against your curse? Long Chen simply stood there with his broadsword. He didn't move. He just allowed the curse rune to approach him. This caused Shuiyu to be startled. He had absolute confidence in his curse arts. If Long Chen was struck, he would immediately become feeble. Then they could capture him alive and torment him. But Shuiyu truly did feel regret. He shouldn't have been holding back in using Long Chen as a tool to train his evil dragon Bone Claw. The corrupt path had suffered immense losses here. Just as that curse rune was about to land on Long Chen, a body flew up and struck the rune. What? The curse rune instantly entered that person's body. He began to quiver, and a black color crept over his face. Shuiyu was startled because he realized that this person was from the corrupt path. He had actually appeared here to take Long Chen's place for his curse. Long Chen smiled. As soon as he had seen Shuiyu here, he had known it would very likely devolve into an immense battle. So he had long since discussed it with Yu Shaoqian. This kind of curse was extremely terrifying. So Yu Shaoqian had always been concealing her power. If he encountered any danger, she was to send a replacement to Long Chen. Now, his prediction had been proven correct. The space around Long Chen relaxed. Yu Changhao's space-locking abilities were obviously limited. He wasn't even a sea expansion expert yet, so he was unable to bring out a treasure item's complete power. Long Chen suddenly appeared beside Yu Changhao. Yu Changhao was the closest, and using the lightning body blink, Long Chen closed the gap in an instant. His sword stabbed toward his bow. Yu Changhao had greatly exhausted his spiritual yuan to use his treasure item's special ability. As a result, Long Chen was at an immense advantage now. There was no time for him to dodge. Clenching his teeth, his bow stabbed toward Long Chen's heart. He was trying to force Long Chen to retreat and gain some breathing room. However, he had underestimated Long Chen's ruthlessness. Long Chen ignored his bow. His broadsword had already reached him. Long Chen's broadsword pierced through Yu Changhao's heart, causing a huge hole to appear in his chest. As for Yu Changhao's bow, it pierced through Long Chen's chest and out his back. Both of them vomited blood. This wasn't the result Yu Changhao had wanted. He had thought Long Chen would dodge. You want to compete in terms of ruthlessness with me? When have I ever been afraid of competing in that? Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying power erupted from his broadsword. He was forcing Yu Changhao to die with him. If Yu Changhao also did the same thing with his bow, then both of them would be blown apart by the other. But in the end, Yu Changhao was afraid. Although he was vicious, he didn't want to die. Sensing this suicidal move of Long Chen's, his wings suddenly flapped and he fell back. At the same time, his heavenly Tao runes wrapped around Long Chen's broadsword, erasing as much of its power as possible. Yu Changhao succeeded in escaping the broadsword, but he hadn't managed to completely block its power. He wildly vomited blood, and cracks appeared on his body. He had almost exploded. Yu Changhao was horrified. He was now afraid of Long Chen's practically suicidal way of fighting. He had always been a noble heavenly genius and always thought of himself as a supreme existence. He definitely wouldn't use his life to bring someone else down with him. He felt his life was the most precious, so he had never had the same thought as Long Chen. Just now, he had walked past the gates of hell. He was finally afraid. But Long Chen didn't give him any time to feel his terror. He once more shot toward him. What? Yu Changhao and Shui Yu were horrified. They saw that Long Chen's heavy injuries had healed in the blink of an eye. As for Yu Changhao, his body was covered in cracks. If he had to receive another one of Long Chen's attacks in his state, he would explode immediately. Naturally, Shui Yu wouldn't allow that. A huge bone claw caught Yu Changhao, protecting him. Long Chen's attack only caused the claw to be sent flying. It didn't injure Yu Changhao. "Brother Yu, quickly heal," shouted Shui Yu. A blood-colored figure appeared behind him. He had summoned his blood devil possession. His black sword released a torrential sword chi as he attacked Long Chen. He finally realized he was in a dangerous situation. Long Chen was too powerful, and if Yu Changhao was killed, then on his own, he wouldn't be able to handle Long Chen. Devil Eye destroys the world. A black light shot out from Shui Yu's third eye. Long Chen had seen this attack before. He knew Shui Yu's third eye was where his divine abilities lay. Its powers were bizarre. He hastily dodged to the side. The black light landed on the huge mountain. A hole appeared in the mountain, one that was extremely smooth. More black rays came from Shui Yu's third eye. Long Chen hastily dodged. This attack was too powerful to take head-on for no reason. Each black light beam pierced the mountain, and it started to crumble. With Shui Yu not hesitating to use his devil eye to release such powerful attacks, Long Chen was unable to get close to him. At this time, Yu Changhao was using the Heavenly Dao recovery to heal his injuries. His injuries were too heavy since his internal organs had been destroyed. He needed to reconstruct them, and that would exhaust a huge amount of his core energy and time. He couldn't fight for a while. Long Chen was like a ghost, using the lightning body blink to dodge Shui Yu's attacks. Although Shui Yu's attacks were powerful, there was no danger of them striking him. Down below, Yu Shaoqian was now only facing just over 30 rank 3 celestials, down from the hundreds of celestials that had previously surrounded her. The majority of the rank 3 celestials were heavily injured now. It could be seen how terrifying Yu Shaoqian's attack had been. She was a bit short of breath now, as that attack also came at a price for her. These experts roared furiously and charged at Yu Shaoqian. They had been too careless just now, allowing her to release such a powerful attack. Now, they wouldn't give Yu Shaoqian the chance to release any more magical arts. Careful! A head flew into the air. A corrupt expert at the front of the charge had been killed with one slash of Yu Shaoqian's sword. Now that they were in close-range battle, they suddenly found that Yu Shaoqian's body and sword were untouchable. She slipped past them like a phantom drifting through their midst. They had never seen such movements. Her sword appeared and disappeared unpredictably, and in just a few breaths, 4 of them were killed. "Go all out," roared an ancient race expert. Let alone catching her alive, they didn't even know if they could kill Yu Shaoqian like this. Shui Yu's order to capture her alive had truly been an impossible request. They all stopped holding back. Some of them even activated their core divine abilities, while others used self-harming techniques to push their power to the peak. That immediately caused Yu Shaoqian's situation to become dangerous. Long Chen saw all of this clearly. He suddenly took a deep breath. While dodging Shui Yu's attacks, he formed hand seals. His spiritual strength erupted. Countless golden scales surged out of the ground like a sea. It happened so suddenly that those experts attacking Yu Shaoqian hadn't even realized what was going on before those sharp scales pierced their bodies. Blood splashed. While Long Chen had been searching for treasures, he had stealthily slipped the hidden ground gold Spider King scales into the ground. It had all been in preparation. Originally, he had been planning on using them to kill Shui Yu. But Shui Yu was up in the air right now, and this attack would be noticed before it could strike him. Seeing Yu Shaoqian in danger, Long Chen decided to use them against the ones attacking her. After all, there were over 20 innate rank 3 celestials against her, and she wasn't a true celestial. Her control over heavenly Tao energy was definitely weaker than her control over her core energy. The golden scales brought with them a rain of blood. As experts, one scale piercing through their body wasn't fatal. But there were just too many of them, and the majority of the experts were turned into sieves. They hastily focused on blocking the scales. Yu Shaoqian took advantage of that opportunity. Light flashed from her forehead. She hastily began to chant something, and she stabbed her sword into the ground. Earth explosion kill wave. A ripple spread over the ground, reaching those experts blocking the scales in an instant. Wherever the ripple went, flesh exploded. Those experts all disappeared. Even Long Chen's scales were crushed apart. It could be seen just how terrifying this attack had been. Yu Shaoqian leaned against her sword, her face a bit pale. She had basically used up all her heavenly Tao energy just now. In fact, she had even stealthily used her core energy, but she had concealed it within her heavenly Tao energy. Bastards, you've brought a calamity upon yourselves by slaughtering the members of the ancient races. Just wait for our reprisal. Your sects, your families, none of them will have good deaths. Yu Changhao had only just recovered and left the protection of the Bone Claw when he saw Yu Shaoqian's attack kill everyone. It wasn't just Shui Yu and Yu Changhao that were stunned. Even Long Chen was stunned. He hadn't expected Yu Shaoqian to possess such a terrifying move. Just how could she release such a powerful magical art in such a short time? It seemed Yu Shaoqian's power far surpassed Long Chen's expectations. In fact, perhaps she would even be able to fight Ling Yuan. However, Yu Shaoqian's aura had clearly dropped after this attack. She had exhausted all her heavenly Tao energy, and if she were to fight again, she would probably have to use her core energy. Once she used her core energy, her status would be revealed. There were probably already people outside this barrier watching in secret. She couldn't attack for now. Good job, Shaoqian. You rest. Leave these two idiots to me, shouted Long Chen. He suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning that shot toward Yu Changhao. His broadsword slashed toward Yu Changhao. An icy light shone in Yu Changhao's eyes as he used his bowstring to meet Long Chen's broadsword. Long Chen's power was a bit too much for him, so he wanted to cause him to rebound before pulling apart the distance and using long-range attacks. But just as his bowstring was about to meet Long Chen's broadsword, Long Chen's other hand opened, and a ball of lightning shot toward Yu Changhao. Roaring filled the air as a lightning dragon appeared within that ball. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws at Yu Changhao. Yu Changhao was horrified. It was too late for him to do anything against this sudden, terrifying move. He hastily activated the golden armor's defenses. Boom! Lei Long's claw landed on Yu Changhao, and he immediately felt all his hair stand on end. He wildly vomited blood. And the worst thing for him was that Long Chen's sword was clashing at his head. Everything was happening too fast, and the distant Shui Yu didn't have any chance to help. Feather blade flying slaughter. Yu Changhao roared furiously and his feathers lit up. They left his wings and transformed into golden rays that shot toward Long Chen. At such a close range, Long Chen could only use his broadsword to protect his head. The rest of his body was instantly pierced by countless rays, practically turning into a sieve. These feathers were Yu Changhao's strongest defense and also his strongest offense. But when these feathers left his body, they would only be usable once. If Long Chen's vitality wasn't so tough, then even with his divine ring and 4-star battle armor, his physical body would probably have exploded. Long Chen, cried Yu Shaoqian. This birdman's strong, but can a bird still be called a bird once it loses all its feathers? What startled everyone was that Long Chen's heavily injured body instantly healed. If it weren't for his broken clothes, they might even suspect that their eyes had broken. Long Chen's broadsword slashed toward Yu Changhao. On the other side, Shui Yu's bone claw was blocked by Lei Long. Lei Long's tail tightly bound the claw. Rumbling rang out and the bone claw was forced back. Yu Changhao didn't manage to block Long Chen's attack, and sword chi landed right on his body. He protected his vitals with his wings, but he still vomited blood. At the same time, his practically indestructible wings were cut open and blood poured out. Without the protection of his feathers, the defensive power of his wings had dropped sharply. He was no longer able to block Long Chen's attacks. Yu Changhao flew back to Shui Yu's side. He needed to stay next to Shui Yu so he could borrow the evil dragon Bone Claw to handle Long Chen. Raging Flame Prison. Yu Changhao had just retreated to Shui Yu's side when endless flame energy condensed around them. Long Chen also formed hand seals, and chanting filled the air, resounding throughout heaven and earth. A huge flame prison formed around them. Long Chen had used Lei Long to distract them so he could use the Raging Flame Prison. Now that the Raging Flame Prison had appeared, Long Chen directly activated the Nirvana scripture to increase its power. Shui Yu and Yu Changhao's expressions changed. They hadn't expected Long Chen to also use a magical art, and they didn't have any defenses against it. Thus, they ended up falling for it. They attacked the flame prison, but they were horrified to find that these flame chains had formed many layers, and they were unbreakable. There was no way to break them with brute force. After all, not everyone had void-piercing eyes, nor were there that many people as learned as Yu Shaoqian. They weren't able to see through the nodes of the Raging Flame Prison. If their attacks didn't land on those nodes, then their attacks would be blunted by the entire Raging Flame Prison. As the Nirvana scripture circulated, the chanting in the air grew louder. It was like the chanting of gods, sacred and holy. The stars in Long Chen's eyes shone and his divine ring circulated. Standing atop Lei Long's head, he appeared like a god in front of the spectators outside. Shui Yu was acclaimed to be the Corrupt Path's top expert in Eastern Wasteland, while Yu Changhao was the leader of the Ancient Race's junior generation. They were both peak experts. But even working together against Long Chen, they were still at a disadvantage. Long Chen was practically heaven-defying. Shui Yu and Yu Changhao were horrified to find that no matter how they struggled, the flame prison continued to shrink and grow stronger. The evil dragon Bone Claw was still outside, and now it was unable to attack the flame prison. It wasn't as if they could attack themselves with it. "We can't hold back any longer," said Shui Yu. Yu Changhao nodded. "Blood devil devours the heavens." An image of a blood devil appeared behind Shui Yu. It opened its mouth, and the world turned dark. That blood devil then split open and transformed into blood-colored runes that entered Shui Yu's body. His third eye opened and an evil aura instantly erupted. It was like the gates of hell had been opened. Despite the flame prison, there was a chill in the air now. A ray of light shot from his third eye onto the flame prison. One of the incredibly sturdy flame chains was severed by that strange light. Following one chain's destruction, the entire flame prison crumbled. The two of them instantly regained their freedom. Even if it's a merged flame, it's still trash. If it had been the earth flame's power, they wouldn't have been able to even think about escaping. Long Chen couldn't help but sigh. The earth flame was still in slumber. He had used his merged flame that was formed from various beast flames. But its toughness was lacking, and when the flame prison was destroyed, he also received a backlash. He almost coughed up blood. "I can't continue like this. I won't be able to keep up the 4-star battle armor for long." Long Chen suddenly noticed that after fighting for so long, his spiritual yuan was already starting to decline. "Long Chen, time for you to die." Shui Yu's hair was standing on end, and black blood was pouring out of his third eye. He had clearly suffered a painful price to gain this battle power. Suddenly, his third eye released a blinding light. It shot onto the evil dragon Bone Claw, and black chi began to rise from the ground. "Careful, Long Chen, he's absorbing the resentful spirit energy of the dead. He's going to use the evil dragon Bone Claw's item spirit," warned Yu Shaoqian. She summoned wings to fly up and assist. "Shaoqian, don't. I can handle it." Long Chen stopped her. If she released her full strength, perhaps she could block this attack, but it wasn't worth it. They couldn't expose her identity here. Long Chen had already thought it through. If he really couldn't handle it, then he would use the Eastern Wasteland Bell. It had already promised to help him out once. No matter how difficult the situation, it could help him handle it. Originally, he had been planning on leaving that opportunity to do some bigger things. But to kill 2 peak experts here wasn't small either. He wasn't losing much. The evil dragon Bone Claw had now absorbed the fallen expert's resentment thanks to Shui Yu's third eye. It began to glow, and it was like something was awakening. The space around it was constantly quivering. Rumbling filled the air. This rumbling came from Yu Changhao. His bow had now grown to 300 meters, and it was floating upright behind him. He was forming hand seals, and the runes on his wings lit up. Those runes were growing brighter and brighter until they were like blazing suns, too bright to stare at directly. Yu Changhao was using his essence blood to summon his treasure item spirit. Fundamentally, treasure items could only be activated once a cultivator had at least reached C expansion, but this was an inherited weapon that had been nourished by his race. As long as it received the summoning of his essence blood, it would be willing to use a portion of its power. Although that portion was very little, for a Xiantian expert, that was a lethal power. For Xiantian experts to be able to use a treasure item, they had to first obtain the treasure item's approval. Yu Changhao's weapon was like that. As for Long Chen's flying rainbow, it had also once activated its power, but that wasn't because of Long Chen. It had been provoked, and it had naturally released that power. Long Chen hadn't obtained its approval, so he was unable to use its power. The light coming from Yu Changhao reached a pinnacle, and then began to dim. But as Yu Changhao's body dimmed, the bow behind him grew brighter. At the same time, it was like an invisible hand was pulling the bowstring. Countless runes condensed, forming a huge arrow. The space around him was constantly quivering as the world's energy was being absorbed by it. Its aura was horrifyingly alarming. This was a peak attack, one that contained all of Yu Changhao's power. Yu Changhao's wings now lost all their light, and they had turned black. In fact, they looked like charred earth, and signs of rotting had appeared on them. He had paid an incredible price for this attack. Yu Changhao's face was as lifeless as a corpse's. Die! Yu Changhao and Shui Yu roared at the same time. The evil dragon Bone Claw clenched into a fist and smashed toward Long Chen. At the same time, a huge arrow shot toward him. The 2 attacks caused heaven and earth to tremble. Long Chen sighed. He was a bit unwilling, but he had decided to use a divine item to swat mosquitoes. He would use the Eastern Wasteland Bell to kill them. Just as he was about to ask the Eastern Wasteland Bell for help, a fierce fluctuation came from within the primal chaos space. Long Chen's expression suddenly became ecstatic. A blood-colored light soared into the clouds. A saber appeared in Long Chen's hands. Runes revolved around the saber like blood, and a powerful pressure caused heaven and earth to change color. Blood Drinker, you finally recovered. We can finally fight together again. At this critical moment, Blood Drinker had come out of its seclusion. The current Blood Drinker was not like the old Blood Drinker. A fierce sharpness came out of it. Long Chen raised Blood Drinker to the sky. A pillar of light soared, shaking the heavens. Within that light pillar was a huge saber image. Countless blood-colored runes circulated within the saber image, and what sounded like the roaring of millions of beasts rang out. The sky turned dim in comparison. Long Chen could feel a closer connection to Blood Drinker now that it had recovered. He could now sense its emotions more clearly. His energy poured into Blood Drinker without reservation. Blood Drinker rumbled, resonating with heaven and earth. It was like the void could not allow its existence. Split the heavens too. The huge saber image in the sky rushed down, looking like it could split the river of stars. It was so imposing that it seemed like nothing could stop it. Boom! In front of everyone's horrified gazes, Long Chen's attack collided with their bone claw and huge arrow. Countless cracks appeared in the air. The void was tearing because of their powers. The ground crumbled as a terrifying chi wave engulfed the world. The mountain beneath them was instantly blown to smithereens, and countless coffins shot out. Quick, run! Suddenly, one person shouted. Those experts outside the barrier were all appalled and fled. The barrier exploded as the coffins shot out. Some experts were struck and killed by those flying coffins. Ditches appeared wherever they went, some spreading even tens of thousands of miles. The mountain had been razed, the barrier had shattered, even the formations were destroyed. The only thing remaining where the mountain had been was a huge hole. It was unknown how many of those distant spectators were still alive. In any case, they were buried by dirt. It would take them a while to dig their way out. Haha. Yu Xiaoqian was covering her head. That attack had been too terrifying. The only thing she had been able to do had been to use her core energy to protect herself. In order to conceal it, she had used her hands to cover her face. She had just shot her way out of the dirt when she heard Long Chen's laughter. Long Chen was standing in the sky. His clothes were in tatters, and he was covered in blood. He appeared wretched, but with his blood-colored saber resting on his shoulder, he appeared grand and heroic. 100 miles from him, Shui Yu and Yu Changhao were lying on the ground, looking at him with shock. They had lost in that exchange. With Blood Drinker resting on his shoulder, Long Chen soaked in that feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. Now Blood Drinker was much stronger, but he wasn't strong enough. Otherwise, that attack would have directly killed the two of them. The most delightful thing to Long Chen was that after absorbing all that Phoenix Blood Black Gold, Blood Drinker's weight had soared to a terrifying 30 million pounds. In other words, it had reached the Immortal Era's 100 caddies. This weight was still a bit too much for Long Chen. Otherwise, his attack just now would have been even stronger. But this was a good thing. He was about to advance to see expansion, and his Enlightenment Palace star was about to reach full satisfaction. At that time, Blooddrinker's weight would be perfect for him. But just as Long Chen was lost in his delight, countless runes flew out of the ground, forming the top of a huge cage in the air. At the same time, a horrifying pressure descended upon the world, causing Long Chen to jump. He hastily looked at Shui Yu and Yu Changhao and saw they were also shocked. They had all used up their energy. No one could release such a horrifying pressure now. The buzzing grew more intense. The ground in a 3,000-mile diameter suddenly bulged. Countless cracks appeared in the cage. Not good. Long Chen, run. There's a terrifying existence sealed underground. Your battle just now probably broke part of its seal, and it's about to break out, shouted Yu Xiaoqian. Wings appeared on her back, and she flew toward Long Chen, then pulled him far into the distance. They couldn't bother with killing Shui Yu and Yu Changhao at this moment. Shui Yu and Yu Changhao's expressions changed. That horrifying pressure only continued to grow, and they felt a chill down to their bones. That pressure clearly contained a fatal threat. The two of them pulled out the last of their strength to fly into the distance. But at that moment, the cage above them shattered. The ground exploded. The four of them immediately sensed space caving in. They suddenly found they were unable to fly away. A furious roar suddenly shook the land. It was like thunder in their ears. A huge, blazing figure broke out of the ground. That figure was 300 meters tall. It appeared to be an ape, but its face was twisted. Its eyes were like lanterns, and its entire body was covered in flame runes. "It's a flame devil," shouted Yu Xiaoqian. The flame devil roared and its runes exploded. With it at the center, everything within 300 miles was engulfed in a sea of flames. Long Chen was startled and hastily summoned his merged flame to form layers of defense. At the same time, they continued fleeing. Long Chen and Yu Xiaoqian were fleeing when they heard Yu Changhao and Shui Yu's miserable screaming. The two of them were being roasted now. They only lacked some cumin and hot pepper. Long Chen couldn't be bothered to look at them. He suddenly found that his merged flame was fundamentally unable to block this flame's attack. It was being burnt away. "Lei Long, protect us." Lei Long flew out and devoured the two of them, continuing to rush away. Lei Long was wrapped around by lightning runes. Lightning and flame didn't have contradictory attributes, so that terrifying flame was temporarily unable to do anything to it. The two of them had only just sighed with relief upon escaping the flames when a huge claw viciously smashed onto Lei Long's body. Lei Long was unable to bear such a terrifying attack and instantly exploded. Long Chen and Yu Xiaoqian both vomited blood. That huge flame devil had shattered Lei Long with a single attack. Before Lei Long could reform, its two hands continued toward them. "Let me!" Yu Shaoqian took a deep breath. Right now, there were endless flames blocking people's sight. She was using her core energy to activate her race rune. The devil character appeared on Yu Shaoqian's forehead. She raised her sword and began to chant. Ancestral bloodline, hear your descendants call. Bestow me with my bloodline power. Following her chanting, sacred light began to shine in her eyes. An enormous aura soared out of Yu Shaoqian. It was like all the energy above the 9 heavens was pouring into her body. Long Chen had seen Yu Shaoqian go all out like this before. He knew this energy wasn't spiritual qi, but a kind of energy he had never seen before. This was what Yu Shaoqian called her core energy. An illusory figure with a height of 30 meters appeared behind her. Last time, Long Chen had also seen this figure, but this time it was more solid. Although he couldn't clearly see its face, he could tell it was a woman. There was also a devil character on her forehead. That woman was holding a sword just like Yu Shaoqian, and she followed Yu Shaoqian's exact movements. When their swords were both pointed at the sky, strange ripples appeared in the void. It was like the void had become water. Devil destroying slash. Yu Shaoqian's sword slashed down, and the illusory figure's sword rumbled. Heaven and earth twisted fiercely as its sword also slashed down on the flame devil's hand. Boom! The flame devil let out a strange roar upon being struck by Yu Shaoqian's attack. Her sword had cut through its hide. Blood splashed. Its blood was actually golden, and when it dropped on the ground, it transformed into runes and disappeared before long. Yu Shaoqian had managed to injure the flame devil, but she was also sent flying by a powerful rebound force. Long Chen hastily caught her, but he was actually helpless to stop her. He was also sent flying with her. With Long Chen holding tightly onto Yu Shaoqian, they crashed into the mountain. Long Chen's blood flipped within him, and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. He had borne the brunt of all this force, so Yu Shaoqian had it much better. The injured flame devil once more attacked the two of them. Who knows if those two were killed by it? Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian rushed as fast as they could with their little energy for over 2 hours before finally taking a breather. After running for so long, Long Chen couldn't even speak without gasping. It seems they weren't. We ended up drawing the flame devil's attention, and the two of them should have taken that chance to flee. Yu Shaoqian shook her head. Foolish girl, can't you at least comfort me? Isn't it fine to say that they're already dead? Can't you lie to make me happy for a bit? Long Chen bitterly smiled. Yu Shaoqian was always serious about everything. Long Chen also knew that those two had probably survived. But if he heard some comfort, he would at least feel a bit better inside. Shaoqian, what origin does that flame devil have? How is it so terrifying? I feel like it's even more powerful than an 8th rank earth dragon, said Long Chen. Yu Shaoqian explained, the flame devils are rumored to come from a flame hell. In the immortal era, they flourished and broke through the spatial walls, breaking into the martial heaven continent. At that time, they caused great damage to the martial heaven continent. The continent's experts were unable to stop them, and they were on the verge of being destroyed. The legends say that immortals intervened, suppressing the flame devils and sealing the broken spatial wall. However, there was still a small number of flame devils scattered throughout the continent. Because they were too weak, they managed to escape their search. Later, people found the leftover flame devils and began killing them. But they found that flame devils could live for practically forever. As a result, the experts captured them and began to raise them, turning them into their pets. However, if you play with fire, you'll get burned. They finally reaped a bitter consequence. The flame devils had reproduced to the point that they broke out of their control. The continent was once more bathed in blood. In the end, they managed to suppress them, and the experts of that time declared that no one could continue raising flame devils or they would be exterminated. As a result, the flame devils have basically become extinct on the martial heaven continent. As for the flame devil here, I feel like it was bound by a formation and its energy was extracted to keep other formations functional. It can save plenty of resources. Flame devils can live practically forever, so their life energy is extremely powerful. It can constantly draw energy out of the lava to live forever. My guess is there is a lava pool nearby supplying it with energy, while the formations draw out its converted energy. Your attack previously broke the formation and let it regain its freedom. Flame devils are originally berserk, so after being enslaved for so many years and finally escaping, it naturally is full of resentment and wants to release it on us. Its power should definitely be much stronger than 8th rank magical beasts. But because it is bound by those divine chains, it isn't able to release its full strength. But even so, the power it released was very likely greater than an 8th rank magical beast. Fine, I won't bother it. Let's go. The huge battle just now is definitely drawing over countless people. We dash. Long Chen's expression suddenly changed. He rushed off while pulling Yu Shaoqian. He sensed a distant group of experts that came in their direction, seeming to be searching for something. Long Chen. It's Long Chen. We've found him. That group was comprised of over 100 people from the ancient race and corrupt path. Within their group, several people were carrying 2 stretchers. 2 charred bodies were lying on the stretchers. Their bodies were pitch black, and if it weren't for the blinking of their eyes, no one would be able to tell they were alive. Help me shout, you bastard Long Chen, you won't be able to escape. I'll definitely make you live a life worse than death, croaked one of those charred bodies. That person was Shuiyu. In order to survive those flames, they had used up their final bit of power. If the Flame Devil's attention hadn't been focused on Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian, they would have definitely died. Although they had escaped with their lives, they had still been burned to a coal-like state. They were unable to bear even the weakest attack now. Fortunately, after Long Chen had drawn the Flame Devil's attention, they had used their last bit of energy to fly out and just happened to run into experts from their side that had been drawn over by the commotion. Of course, they had also encountered some righteous experts. When the crowd had seen Shuiyu and Yu Changhao, they hadn't been able to believe their eyes. Seeing them in their half-dead states, they were unable to connect them with the peak experts in their minds. They hastily went to protect them. As for the righteous experts, they hadn't known what to do or what had happened. After being saved, they resisted fainting. Clenching their teeth, they had ordered their people to detour around the Flame Devil and chase after Long Chen. They were sure he wasn't much better off than them. Now was the best chance to hunt him down. Long Chen, you bastard, you won't be able to escape. Lord Shuiyu will definitely make you live a life worse than death, shouted a corrupt expert. What kind of garbage barbecue are you sending to me? Which cook burnt it so badly? Just looking at those burnt lumps makes me nauseous. Long Chen refused to lose out. As he rushed away with Yu Shaoqian, he shouted a loud response, causing Shuiyu and Yu Changhao to almost pass out from rage. He was actually treating them as barbecue. Long Chen alter hivi. Yu Changhao coughed up a mouthful of blood. Both he and Shuiyu had already exhausted all their heavenly Dao energy. They didn't even have any spiritual yuan either. They were in a dreadful state. Right now, they had no ability to heal. They first needed to use medicinal pills to recover and restore their spiritual yuan. That was an extremely slow process. And in this state, they might die to the slightest danger. But they also knew that Long Chen was completely spent. If they didn't kill him now, it would be much more difficult in the future. So this was a rare opportunity. Suddenly, one of the ancient race experts shot an arrow at Long Chen. Long Chen swung his broadsword behind him, destroying that arrow. But he was also sent flying. Haha, as expected, you really are out of energy, Long Chen. It's hard just for you to block an ordinary attack from me. The person who had shot the arrow was just a rank 2 celestial. This arrow of his was just to test Long Chen's state. Right now, Long Chen was also exhausted, with his spiritual yuan drained. With just his physical strength, just raising his broadsword was taxing, let alone using Blood Drinker. Out of energy? You can come and try it, sneered Long Chen, suddenly stopping. Fine, then let me try it. A rank 3 celestial walked out from the corrupt path's side, and forming hand seals, a skull appeared in front of him. He spat a mouthful of blood onto it. A fierce, evil aura erupted from the skull. It instantly grew larger, and it shot out a ray of light at Long Chen. Long Chen raged inside. Fuck, I tell you to try it and you try it? I don't see you bastards listening so obediently normally. Seeing that light coming at him, he knew it was a treasure item. Although it was a heretical one, this kind of attack could easily kill him and Yu Shaoqian in their weak state. Yu Shaoqian was pale. Blocking the Flame Devil's attack in the end had already overdrafted her power slightly. She was powerless to fight. Blood Drinker, slaughter him. Blood Drinker suddenly appeared. A ray of red light soared into the sky, transforming into a heavenly saber that slashed down on that light. Long Chen was already powerless to use Blood Drinker, but it had agreed to his request and released an attack on its own. However, without Long Chen's power supporting it, the attack was much weaker, and he could only use it once. The corrupt expert and the skull were blown apart by Blood Drinker. Those experts turned pale with fright, and they all stopped, not daring to get closer. Long Chen hastily put away Blood Drinker and sneered, "Let me tell you, even if I'm out of energy, I can still use this kind of attack 3 times. I've used it once now, so whoever else wants to die can come out now." Long Chen was simply trying to frighten them. Although treasure items were strong, they weren't energy storage weapons. Without the owner putting any energy into one, being able to release one attack already made it peak grade. He was only able to do this because he was connected mentally and spiritually to Blood Drinker. Blood Drinker was willing to offer up its energy to Long Chen. That was absolute trust. But no matter how much it trusted him, without any energy supporting it, it couldn't help Long Chen. Don't listen to him. He's definitely just putting on airs. Such an attack can only be released once. Shui Yu clearly wasn't so easy to trick. After all, he was a peak expert, and he had a deeper understanding of treasure items. The others felt the same way, but they didn't dare to take that risk. They just stayed together, chasing after him, each of them maintaining the same speed. None of them wanted to be the first to test it again. Seeing that, Long Chen sped off. If he could run into some companions, there really was a chance of getting away. "Wu Hei, I order you to attack. You understand the consequences," shouted Shui Yu. The person he had named was an ordinary rank 3 celestial. Being ordered by Shui Yu, he was infuriated inside. But he still attacked. This fellow was smart. He used a long-distance attack of Sword Qi. At the same time, he prepared to retreat, causing Shui Yu to clench his teeth. He was clearly just going through the motions without any actual power. When that Sword Qi was about to reach Long Chen, a lightning dragon appeared and blocked the Sword Qi. But Lei Long had previously endured an attack from the terrifying Flame Devil. It was also out of energy and it shattered. Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian were blown away. Yu Shaoqian even coughed up blood. She had no defensive ability and was weaker than a rank 1 celestial right now. Fuck, how are there none of them here? The map clearly indicates their existence. Long Chen was looking around constantly. Suddenly, he sensed spiritual fluctuations and his eyes brightened. Yes, it was here. He pulled Yu Shaoqian in that direction. After a few more miles, dozens of figures appeared. Their auras were vast like the sea, and their robes were strange. They icily stared at Long Chen and the others, their weapons raised. Seeing those people, Yu Shaoqian's face paled, but Long Chen became ecstatic. Yu Shaoqian didn't know about his relationship with the Shao tribe. Here. Long Chen tossed out a jade plate to the person who seemed to be the leader of this aboriginal group. Although that person's aura was retracted, the pressure coming from him was extremely strong. He was definitely an expert amongst experts. That person was startled and caught the jade plate. Once he looked at it, his expression changed slightly, and he waved his hand at the people behind him. "Kill them!" Following his shout, those experts charged forward at Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian. Illusory seas appeared behind them. They were all sea expansion celestials. Fuck, did that old man trick me? Long Chen was startled to see these people charging at them. He pushed Yu Shaoqian behind him and raised his sword at them. But those aboriginals shot past Long Chen. They launched a fierce attack on Shui Yu and the others. When those aboriginals had first appeared, Shui Yu and the others had paused, thinking that the aboriginals would kill Long Chen. But the aboriginals actually ignored him. Fall back. Shui Yu couldn't raise his head to see what was going on, but he quickly realized the situation had turned sour. They only had 100 people here. In the face of dozens of sea expansion celestials, they wouldn't stand a chance. Most importantly, he and Yu Changhao were so heavily injured that they really might be killed. However, they had still underestimated the viciousness of the aboriginals. Although they had fled quickly, the aboriginals didn't let them off. They chased after them, and in just the first clash, over 10 of their experts were killed by them. This was the aboriginals' territory. There was no heavenly Tao suppression here. Their power was at its peak state, and facing invaders, they would naturally kill them with their full force. Seeing Shui Yu and the others fleeing miserably, Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian were no longer able to endure. Long Chen quickly took out a seat for Yu Shaoqian. Then he sat straight on the ground, gasping for breath. This had been too dangerous. He had almost fallen into their hands. You should be Long Chen, correct? The leader of this group of aboriginals walked over. He appeared to be in his 40s. He had a square nose and appeared dignified, the kind of person who didn't speak much. Yes, I'm Long Chen. A senior told me that as long as I took out this tablet, you would help me, said Long Chen. Correct. This is Lord Heavenai's token of trust. Furthermore, Lord Heavenai told us to look after whoever showed this jade plate. Even if our entire tribe were to be destroyed, we had to do anything to help you, said that man. He actually offered Long Chen the jade plate with both hands extremely respectfully. Long Chen hastily tried to get up to receive it, but he was just too tired. The fact he wasn't lying on the ground was already not bad. He had no energy to stand, so he could only awkwardly receive the tablet with both hands. Senior, why would Lord Heavenai look after me so much? Furthermore, just what status does he have for you to put your tribes on the line with just his word? Asked Long Chen. He was extremely curious about that old man's status. The man smiled slightly. Lord Heavenai is the guide of all aboriginals. In our eyes, he is like a god. We naturally have to listen to his words. Just as they were talking, the aboriginals that had charged at Shui Yu and the others came back. They were holding quite a few weapons that were covered in blood. Did you manage to kill those 2 pieces of barbecue? Those 2 people that looked like they were charcoal? Asked Long Chen. One of them glanced at the middle-aged man, and seeing him nod, he said, no. They fled too quickly, and they had quite a few experts amongst them. Even here, we didn't have a guarantee to capture them. They quickly escaped into the cursed region, so we didn't dare to chase. Regretful. Let me tell you, those 2 fellows are the fattest sheep. Under that charred layer, their entire bodies are good meat. Long Chen slapped his leg in pity. Yu Shaoqian felt like she was dreaming. How did Long Chen know the aboriginals? Then that really is regretful. Those aboriginals all felt some regret. They urgently needed the invaders' resources, especially their medicinal pills and weapons. But that's also fine. Since you've saved me, I naturally won't let you work for nothing, comforted Long Chen. Long Chen, we helped you because of Lord Heavenai. We don't want your money. Are you looking down on us? Said the middle-aged man frostily. Ah, good. Then I won't stand on courtesy. Can we stay here for a bit to recover? Probed Long Chen. After all, their spiritual yuan was exhausted. This kind of state was the worst to be in. Even if they had less than half their spiritual yuan, they could have fully recovered it in just a few days. But now that they were fully exhausted, it was like their bodies had entered a state of quasi-death. They needed a long time to fully recover. It was an extremely troublesome matter, which was why cultivators wouldn't use their final bit of power unless they had to. You're welcome to come and rest in the tribe. The middle-aged man nodded. He was actually extremely curious why Lord Heavenai would care for this Long Chen, an invader. Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian swallowed a qi recovery pill. An hour later, they finally felt like they could walk, and they went with the aboriginals to their ancestral land. But this time, Long Chen wasn't forced to wear a blindfold. After a few short-distance transportation formations, they arrived in a desert. They continued through the desert. Because Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian had exhausted all their spiritual yuan, they couldn't fly. Furthermore, Yu Xiaoqian was a woman. It wouldn't be good for her to be carried by others. So everyone could only walk. May I ask Senior's name? Long Chen finally broke the silence. I wouldn't dare to be called Senior by you. I am Shizong, a member of the Stone Tribe. All of us are surnamed Shi, said the middle-aged man. No wonder you don't like to talk, laughed Long Chen. Long Chen. Yu Xiaoqian lightly hit Long Chen, meaning not to make jokes at their expense when they weren't friends. It's fine. Our Stone Tribe's people really are a bit taciturn, said Shizong frankly. Long Chen smiled. I haven't come into contact with the Stone Tribe before, but I did stay with the Xiao Tribe for a while. I feel like we aren't outsiders anymore. Furthermore, you've saved my life, so there's no need to stand on courtesy. The Stone Tribe's experts nodded inside. Their people didn't like speaking that much, and the words they did speak were always direct and to the point. Their character was just like that, and although they didn't dare to go against Lord Heaven-Eye's orders, they still didn't feel very kindly toward Long Chen. After all, he was an invader. But Long Chen had been speaking sincerely and naturally from the start as if they weren't strangers. That made them feel more comfortable toward him. Big brother Long Chen, said one man. No, I'm not older than you. You can just call me brother. Long Chen hastily waved his hand. He wasn't so old that someone who appeared to be in his 30s could call him big brother. Was he trying to make him seem old on purpose? Okay, brother Long Chen. Why were those people chasing you? Asked this person. But as soon as he did, he saw Shizong glare at him, and he realized he had misspoken. Long Chen laughed, and being a bit taller than that person, he wrapped his arm around his shoulder. Haha, just talking about it is infuriating. One of them is my mortal enemy, while the other, he was just trying to be a poser and trample me to death to prove how badass he was. Brother, tell me, if you were me, what would you do? What else could I do? Just beat them to death. Exactly. That's exactly what I did. So they ended up turning into barbecue. But we weren't much better off than them. Those two brats couldn't beat me, so they called over a group of little brothers to handle me. If it weren't for you, I would have died, laughed Long Chen. His coarse words caused the Stone Tribe's experts to smile slightly. They liked this kind of speaking method. It was direct and blunt. Of course, Long Chen also could tell that the Stone Tribe's people were like that, which was why he spoke this way. Yu Xiaoqian was a bit speechless. She was skilled in observation, and she could tell with just a few words and gestures from Long Chen, the Aboriginal's wariness toward him had dropped a great deal. They began to talk and joke with him. In just an hour, Long Chen had begun chatting to them like they were old friends. It seemed Long Chen's face-reading ability was truly effective. The Stone Tribe's people were a bunch of direct men just like him. Brother Long Chen, you really are refreshing and to my taste. Once we get back, let's have a proper drink together, laughed one of the Aboriginals. The Stone Tribe's people were already treating him as a brother. Shizong frowned. Long Chen has exhausted his spiritual yuan. He needs to rest. You guys shouldn't disturb him. I forgot. All right, then we'll wait until Brother Long Chen is recovered before drinking. Long Chen, those two charcoal people should be very strong, correct? Asked Shizong. This was his first time asking Long Chen a question. Perhaps he felt Long Chen was frank and straightforward enough that he could put down his misgivings. Yes, they truly are powerful. Their breeding was good, and they are two innate rank 3 celestials with ancestral bloodline inheritances. Even amongst innate rank 3 celestials, they are peak figures, said Long Chen. Previously, Long Chen had been able to dominate anyone in the same realm. But now, he was starting to feel like freaks were surrounding him. It was getting more and more taxing to fight them. Now he couldn't even beat them. But the others were deathly silent. All of them looked at Long Chen with shock. They clearly knew just how powerful innate rank 3 celestials were. We've arrived. I'll bring you to see the tribe leader. An oasis appeared in the desert. There was a string of tents within the oasis. Shi equals stone. Shizong brought Long Chen to see the Stone Tribe's leader. Long Chen was startled to see that he was a foundation forging expert. In terms of appearance, he seemed to be the same age as Shizong, And only later did Long Chen learn that he was Shi Song's grandfather. He didn't seem to find it too strange for Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian to arrive here. He was very cordial. He directly set up a new tent for Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian, as well as setting up guards so that they could heal in peace. He even offered them their stone tribe's most precious medicinal pills. But naturally, those medicinal pills were refused. They were too lacking, and Long Chen couldn't even force himself to eat them. He simply said that he had his own pills before going into seclusion with Yu Shaoqian. This time, it took him a long time to recover. Long Chen only came out of seclusion after half a month. His spiritual yuan had finally begun to recover. It was like starting a fire. The first requirement was a flame seed. When the spiritual yuan was completely exhausted, the flame seed was also extinguished. To recover, the flame seed had to be reignited in order to recover more spiritual yuan. Igniting the flame seed of his spiritual yuan took him half a month. The price for completely exhausting one's spiritual yuan was a heavy one. Yu Shaoqian was still sitting. While in seclusion, she wasn't wearing her veil. Her beautiful face that was both holy and bewitching was fully revealed to him. That was a kind of soul-stealing beauty that would make it so a person couldn't extricate themselves from it. After staring at her for a while, Long Chen suddenly realized he was breathing faster, and a strong desire had appeared. He had an urge to kiss her. Stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Important things have to be said 3 times. The meat will sooner or later be cooked in the pot. It won't run away, so don't rush things. With supreme willpower, Long Chen turned away from Yu Shaoqian to avoid losing control. It was too difficult to control himself around her. Let's check the spoils. To distract himself, Long Chen looked inside his spiritual space. Damn, am I seeing things? There's this many? Long Chen almost jumped. His spiritual space was filled with various treasure items. They were piled into a small mountain. There were probably no less than 1,000 of them. Furthermore, hundreds of spatial rings could be seen piled up beside the treasure items. While you killed people, I'd be embarrassed to just do nothing, so I helped you gather some of this junk. It'll cancel out the karma of absorbing their spiritual strength, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Senior, how much have you recovered? Long Chen was delighted. He wanted to know just how much the Eastern Wasteland Bell had recovered so he could decide when to use it. How much have I recovered? Hee, you don't need to play such a game with me. The injuries I've suffered are not something you can imagine. My body is incomplete, and this little spiritual strength is only able to nourish my soul. To recover, I need to find the other pieces of my body, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Where are the other parts of your body? Do you need me to help you? Asked Long Chen courteously. Hee, you want me to owe you another favor? Little fellow, give up on that thought. Your fate is different from others. Even if it's to get rid of karma, each time I help you will still cause you to bear the heavenly Daos karma. You can't rely on anyone in this life. You can only rely on yourself. To put it in the manner of the secular world, if you lean on a mountain, the mountain will collapse. If you lean on water, the water will dry up. What the fuck? Why does it feel like I'm an unlucky star? Long Chen was speechless. That's not the case. All you need to know is that your cultivation path is different from everyone else's. You'll need to work for whatever you have, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Suddenly, it shut its mouth. It must have felt that it had touched upon some taboo. Fine, I feel like power is more reliable than luck anyways. Senior, are there any good treasure items amongst this pile? Can you help me pick some? Asked Long Chen. They're all trash. What is there to pick? Said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. No, please don't look at them from your height. I need to know which one of these are top grade and which are trash, said Long Chen. Treasure items are split into low, middle, high, and top grade. You already have 2 top grade treasure items. One of them is that sword, Flying Rainbow. The other one is your blood-colored saber. As for that saber of yours, it should have been forged by an ancient craftsman. It's much better than average, and its innate quality has also received an upgrade. It's not bad, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Long Chen hastily took out Flying Rainbow and Blood Drinker from the primal chaos space. He asked, Senior, can you tell me more about them? Me? Are you treating me as some ordinary craftsman? Said the Eastern Wasteland Bell with irritation. But although it was dissatisfied, it still said, Flying Rainbow's quality is not bad. The forging technique that went into it was a bit lacking, but because an expert once used their own sword Dao to create its spirit, it contains a trace of the sword Dao's will. However, you aren't a sword cultivator, and you can't receive its approval. So it's fated that it can't become your companion. You should find a better master for it. Long Chen thought to himself that there would be no better master for it than Yu Zifeng. Originally, his plan had already been to give it to him. As for your blood-colored saber, its item spirit has been injured. No wonder its power is low. Oh, it actually absorbed Phoenix blood black gold and is still digesting its essence? Longchen, you have Phoenix blood black gold? Asked the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Yes, I do. If you need it, you can take it. But there are only some broken down pieces now, said Longchen. Longchen saw that the Phoenix blood black gold he had obtained was already fractured. It was now broken down, and he assumed there wasn't much use to it any longer. Let me see it, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell a bit urgently. Longchen took out a piece of the Phoenix blood black gold out of the primal chaos space. The Eastern Wasteland Bell scanned the ore and was shocked. It actually contains the Divine Phoenix's essence blood, and from a pure-blooded descendant of the Divine Phoenix at that. This is very helpful to me. Hearing that the Eastern Wasteland Bell wanted it, Long Chen brought all the Phoenix blood black gold out of his primal chaos space. Seeing more and more ore entering the spiritual space, the Eastern Wasteland Bell couldn't help but say, Long Chen, this ore is very important to me. However, your conditions don't change. You can only help me once, said Long Chen. Yes. If you feel like you're on the losing side, it's fine. I'm not so stingy. Blood Drinker has already said that it doesn't need this ore. It's useless to me. If you didn't want it, I'd have to just throw it away, said Long Chen. He truly didn't have a use for it as he didn't have the time or energy to go smelt the ore for its essence. The Eastern Wasteland Bell was a bit embarrassed. After all, its status was extremely high. But it had its own difficulties and couldn't help Long Chen too much. After obtaining the Phoenix blood black gold, the Eastern Wasteland Bell felt bad not helping Long Chen more. Hence, it helped Long Chen divide the treasure items into grades. Long Chen was disappointed to see that many of the treasure's items he had obtained were just low grade. He had obtained 1187 treasure items in total when including the ones from the coffins and the ones from people he had killed. 1045 of them were only low grade. That caused his excitement to diminish. But then when he thought about it, he laughed involuntarily. He had been too greedy. After all, those were treasure items, not cabbages. When he thought about it, just how many treasure items had been in the Xiantian Dao Sect's treasury? A person should know when to be satisfied. There were 107 middle-grade treasure items. Middle-grade treasure items had higher-level item spirits. They had a certain level of intelligence, and thus wouldn't be as foolish as low-grade treasure items. They could help their masters release even greater power. There were 35 high-grade treasure items. 2 of them were the pagoda and the bracelet he had swindled out of Huang Junmo. Long Chen's guess was that Huang Junmo definitely hadn't known the true power of these 2 treasure items. He had just felt them to be not bad, but hadn't known their true value. If it weren't for the Eastern Wasteland Bell, Long Chen also wouldn't have been able to distinguish their value. High-grade treasure items had even more intelligent item spirits. But such treasure items required their masters to use spiritual strength to nourish them and form a bond of trust. They would form contracts with their owners, with each side dependent on the other. With the 2 sides working together, they could release the greatest power. The Eastern Wasteland Bell explained that Blood Drinker was originally a peak-grade treasure item. Its quality was extremely high, and the craftsmanship that went into it could not be criticized. Most importantly, having absorbed some of the Phoenix blood black gold's energy, its quality had greatly increased. It was just that its item spirit had once been injured, so Long Chen needed to nourish it with his own soul. It gave Long Chen an item nourishing technique. That delighted Long Chen. The Eastern Wasteland Bell was so picky, so whatever it transmitted to him was definitely a priceless treasure. This nourishing technique was incredibly refined, and he had never heard of it before. Furthermore, the Eastern Wasteland Bell hadn't said that he couldn't transmit this technique to others. He planned on transmitting this secret art to everyone by his side. That way, they could quickly control treasure items as well. Regretfully, Yu Shaoqian was from the original devil race. Their weapons were different from his world's. She couldn't bring out these treasure items' power, which was why they were all in Long Chen's hands. Half a day later, Yu Shaoqian also awoke. She had managed to activate her heavenly Tao energy and begun to recover her spiritual yuan. However, she had completely exhausted her core energy, and it was impossible for her core energy to recover in this world. She had to return to the skyscraping world for that. Seeing Long Chen look at her with distress, she smiled and comforted him, saying that it was a good thing. Without the slightest bit of the original devil race's energy, she could undergo tribulation in the immemorial path and receive its lightning baptism. Countless people were waiting for the spiritual qi eruption right now. That would give them a perfect foundation for sea expansion and allow them to walk further on their cultivation path. Many people even thought that the secret to becoming a god or immortal lay in this heavenly tribulation. Originally, Yu Shaoqian had no intention of undergoing that tribulation. But because Long Chen had given her a heavenly Tao fruit, she could enjoy that special treatment. She was also preparing to tell her clansmen to find ways to exhaust their own core energy so that they could undergo their tribulations as well. "Brother Long Chen, there's someone looking for you," a person called out from outside the tent. Guoran. Long Chen had never expected that the person looking for him was Guoran. Within the Stone Tribe's territory, Guoran was surrounded by a dozen experts. They only let him go with Long Chen when they saw that Long Chen knew him. Boss, I've been looking for you for a long time now, but to think that you ended up with the Aboriginals. Junior brother's reverence is like torrential water. Guoran was amazed to see Long Chen had muddled his way into the Aboriginals' side so peacefully. "Can you stop with the useless words?" said Long Chen. This brat was becoming more and more of a suck-up. Seeing Guoran's mischievous smile, Yu Shaoqian couldn't help but laugh. The two of them really were alike. It was just that it was unknown who had infected who. "Wow, boss, you were so fast in catching another dash." Long Chen grabbed Guoran's throat, and just like that, dragged him into the tent. This brat had no handle on his mouth, and who knew what he would say in a moment. "Boss, you almost strangled me to death." "Cough, cough," grumbled Guoran. "Oh, thank you, sister-in-law." Guoran respectfully received a cup of tea from Yu Shaoqian with both hands. Yu Shaoqian blushed and hastily went over to Long Chen's side. "You two can chat. I'll go for a stroll." Once Yu Shaoqian had left, Guoran couldn't help but sigh with admiration. "Boss, your pickup abilities really are unrivaled beneath the heavens. When can I also reach your realm?" Killing the strongest enemies, picking up the most beautiful girls." Long Chen couldn't be bothered to explain that he had known Yu Shaoqian for a long time. He asked, "How did you come here?" Guoran said, "Aren't I doing exactly what you told me to do? I spent all this time looking for everyone." "It's been hard on you." "So, did you manage to find everyone?" asked Long Chen. He knew that Guoran's armor could transform into a flying boat. No one could compare to him when it came to searching for people. Luckily I didn't fail your orders. I managed to get in touch with Meng Qi and Wanu. They're in seclusion right now." As for Yu Zifeng, his luck was heaven-defying. He obtained an ancient sword Dao inheritance. When I found him, he thought I was an enemy and almost killed me with one slash of his sword. Gu Yang also wasn't lazy. He obtained an ancient medicinal pill and is in the process of absorbing it. Everyone is hidden in seclusion. Other than me, no one else knows their positions. As for Wild Dash, I know about Wild. We ended up running into each other. However, Long Chen told Guoran about how Li Qi and Song Mingyuan had left. Guoran nodded. "In truth, I also sensed that the two of them were hiding something from me when I brought them to Wild. There's nothing that can be done. People all have their own pride, and the stronger a person, the greater their pride. People as shameless as me are rare." As captains, the two of them are both in charge of 90 Dragonblood warriors. However, compared to Gu Yang and Yu Zifeng, they are much weaker. They naturally don't like that feeling. To want to get stronger wasn't wrong. Long Chen should loosen his reins and give them more space to find their own opportunities. That was a principle Long Chen understood, but he was unable to go through with it. The loss of even one of his brothers would make him feel pain. Seeing Long Chen's grave expression, Guoran continued. Sister-in-law Meng Qi obtained a secret art in an ancient maze. She's in the midst of studying it. As for sister-in-law Wanner, she found a wind attribute trial region. She decided to just stay there. Hearing all this good news, Long Chen's heart finally relaxed. I've given them everything you asked me to give them. Hee. Now, everyone's focused on the spiritual qi eruption to break through to sea expansion, said Guoran. He was already at the peak of Xiantian and just waiting for that moment. But compared to Boss, we really were lazy. I've already heard all the stories circulating about you, which is how I managed to find you here. Even when Yu Changhao and Shui Yu worked together, they were still beaten like dogs by you and almost killed. Long Chen shook his head. That's not something to be happy about. Someone told me that innate celestials like Shui Yu and Yu Changhao, who also possess their ancestors' bloodline blessing, will automatically advance to rank 4 celestials upon reaching sea expansion. And that's not the worst part. Many of their innate divine abilities can only be fully used upon reaching sea expansion. So once they advance, their battle power will increase by dozens of times, perhaps even more than 100 times. Long Chen wasn't just trying to scare him. This was what Lin Yueyan had told him. Before she had encountered him, Shui Yu had been her target. She had precisely been waiting for Shui Yu to reach sea expansion before having an all-out fight against him. Now that she had changed targets to Long Chen, she didn't want him to vainly die at other people's hands, so she had warned him about this. With Lin Yueyan's character, she definitely wouldn't just try to scare him. Now that he had fought with those powerful geniuses, Long Chen was shocked by their innate divine abilities. Once they reached sea expansion, they would be able to erupt with their true power. That much? Asked Guoran in shock. Perhaps even more than you imagine, said Long Chen gravely. Making sure he wasn't careless was best. I have another task for you. Since you know everyone's location, it's perfect. Long Chen took out 4 heavenly Dao fruits. Those were heaven-defying treasures. He naturally didn't need to introduce them to Guoran. He almost shouted in delight. Long Chen also gave Guoran 4 spatial rings. There was one for Meng Qi, Tang Wana, Gu Yang, and Yu Zifeng. He had given them things in accordance with their own traits. Each one of them was given at least 10 treasure items, and only the best. There were weapons, boots, and arm protectors, as well as hard and soft armor. There were even bracelets, rings, necklaces, earrings, and all kinds of various treasure items. To sum it up, Long Chen was fully equipping all of them. He was like a wealthy landlord using his own money to raise everyone's power to a new level. However, to release these treasure items' true power would require everyone to advance to sea expansion first. Otherwise, that little bit of spiritual yuan in the Xiantian realm wouldn't allow them to use even a single treasure item. Originally, these treasure items couldn't be stored in spatial rings. It was the Eastern Wasteland Bell which had helped seal their power so that they would lie asleep in the rings. They would only awaken once they were taken out. After making sure Guoran wouldn't mix up the spatial rings, Long Chen gave him all the treasure items he didn't need. Guoran's forging table was a priceless treasure. As Guoran's own skill improved, he discovered more and more amazing aspects of it. One was that it could merge into his body. Another one was that the forging table had its own space. It could store many things. But even so, over 1,000 treasure items almost filled the entire space. Boss, am I dreaming? Guoran couldn't believe his eyes. How had he obtained this many treasure items? In the Xiantian Dao sect, there were so many sea expansion experts that still didn't have the qualifications to possess a treasure item. In truth, treasure items were very rare. It was just that Long Chen had encountered a nest of them, as well as plundered the other experts who had arrived there with him. So now he had a ridiculous number of them. You can study these treasure items. Perhaps they'll help your forging arts. There's also these. Long Chen waved his hand, and a pile of needles appeared on the ground. They were the rockthorn mice's quills. What are these? They don't look like metal. Guoran picked up a needle, but as a result, the sharp quill pierced his finger. Pig! Long Chen was speechless. A dagger appeared in his hand and he cut off Guoran's finger. That finger quickly turned pitch black and corroded upon falling to the ground. Damn, how poisonous! Guoran was shocked. He even forgot to use his heavenly Tao recovery. You can properly study these and see if you can include them in your inventions. If you can use these properly, they'll be a terrifying killing tool, said Long Chen. Finally, here is a priceless treasure. I'm sure you'll be happy to see it. When Guoran saw the huge earth dragon's egg, he was incomparably excited. Long Chen had him take the remaining 2 eggs for Meng Qi and Tang Wan'er as well. He told him to go find Meng Qi first, so that she could help Guoran bind the egg and teach him how to raise a magical beast. When Guoran left, he was absolutely delighted. Long Chen also managed to relax. He once more entered seclusion with Yu Shaoqian, focusing on recovering his spiritual yuan. He also began devouring medicinal pills, pushing forward to the 9th star transformation. Once the Enlightenment Palace star had reached the 8th star transformation, Long Chen had realized the amount of energy required to reach the 9th star transformation was practically unfathomable. But as long as he continued consuming medicinal pills, he would succeed sooner or later. Long Chen also summoned Little Snow. Yu Shaoqian liked Little Snow, and Little Snow liked Yu Shaoqian. Once they had recovered their spiritual yuan, Yu Shaoqian began to bring Little Snow out of the stone tribe to roam and play. As for Long Chen, he focused on consuming medicinal pills. He had some rare days of peace in the stone tribe. Long Chen decided to just stay here. In order to express his gratitude to the stone tribe, he gave them all the medicinal pills he had plundered. He had killed so many people that he had an ocean's worth of pills and weapons. This kind of wealth caused the stone tribe's experts to jump in shock. The stone tribe didn't decline his generosity. After taking his gift, they directly gave him a spatial ring. A mountain of yuan spirit stones was inside the ring. There had to be over 1 million of them. Just like that, Long Chen passed more than 2 happy months in the stone tribe. Each day, he drank and played with the stone tribe's men. He was content during these days. Finally, the world turned gloomy. Mist began to condense in the sky. Long Chen's heart shook. The legendary spiritual qi eruption was finally beginning. It had been exactly half a year since the immemorial path had opened. On this day, Long Chen clearly felt the spiritual qi of heaven and earth change qualitatively, and the spiritual qi in the air was growing denser and denser. "Brother Long Chen, the tribe leader wants to see you," said a stone tribe expert. Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian hastily followed him to the tribe leader's tent. All the stone tribe's experts had gathered. Shirt Song was also present, and he nodded in greeting upon seeing Long Chen arrive. The spiritual qi eruption has begun. Not only is the spiritual qi in the immemorial path growing denser, but the laws of heaven and earth, as well as the world's core energy, are within it. This is the best moment to advance to see expansion. Are you ready? The tribe leader got right to the point. Yes, we've long since made our preparations. Is there anything we should know? Asked Long Chen. The stone tribe leader smiled. Just a few things. This spiritual qi eruption is related to the crumbling of the immemorial path. As for the details, perhaps only Lord Heaven I knows them, but I will tell you what I know. During this time, the special spiritual qi will spread throughout every corner of the immemorial path, so there's basically no difference where you make your breakthrough. However, there are a few special places with formations that will allow a cultivator to make twice the gains for half the effort. Those places are called immortal condensing platforms. Long Chen was startled to learn such a secret, but Yu Shaoqian didn't reveal any emotion. She had long since known about this. The stone tribe leader continued, however, these immortal condensing platforms have their benefits, but they also have their drawbacks. The spiritual qi it gathers will contain more of the laws of heaven and earth, and is extremely helpful to comprehend the heavenly Taos. But because your comprehension of the heavenly Taos increases, your corresponding heavenly tribulation will also be stronger. If you can't handle it, you'll be turned to dust. So I ask you, what do you want to do? Long Chen immediately understood something. Tribe leader, I don't think it would be right for us to use something as precious as your immortal condensing platform. Ah no. It's not our stone tribes. In truth, there are quite a few immortal condensing platforms on the immemorial path. However, many of them were destroyed, and a few were noticed by invaders. So we hid the remaining ones for our own people. The Aboriginals possess 2 such immortal condensing platforms. However, we can't use them because that would just be sending ourselves to our deaths. The heavenly tribulation becomes furious and refuses to allow us to use it to advance. In fact, even if we don't use the immortal condensing platforms, advancing at this time would still be exceedingly dangerous. The tribe leader sighed. His gaze was full of hatred as he looked up at the heavens, but he was powerless. The Aboriginals felt like they were a pitiful people abandoned by the heavens. They could only rely on themselves. So, I have to warn you. The immortal condensing platforms are a double-edged blade. You have to choose carefully, said the tribe leader. Although Long Chen was an outsider, after being in contact with him for so long, he very much liked this frank child. He was to the stone tribe's taste, so he gave him this opportunity and warning. What do you say? Long Chen asked Yu Shaoqian. It's an extremely difficult decision. Perhaps the immortal condensing platforms are the true secret to becoming a god or immortal. We can't miss it. Yu Shaoqian's eyes were full of hope. This was a gamble. If they won it, then perhaps she could allow the original devil race to escape its current predicament. Hee, I'll accompany you, said Long Chen. All right, I knew you would make this decision, but don't blame an old man for talking too much, laughed the tribe leader. Of course not, laughed Long Chen. Let's go. I'll take you there. The tribe leader brought Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian out of the stone tribe's ancestral land. What surprised Long Chen was that the majority of the stone tribe's experts were also brought along. The stone tribe was huge. Half their experts would be numbered in the tens of thousands. For this many people to accompany him, it felt far too big in scope. It felt like they were going into battle. The tribe leader led them all for 7 days. The spiritual qi in the air was growing denser and denser, even condensing into a mist. 7 days later, they arrived at a huge altar. The altar had a diameter of 300 miles. However, half of it had crumbled, and it was unknown whether it could still be used. There were 2 pillars on the altar, each of them 300 meters tall and 30 meters wide. Countless ancient lines were carved into it, but there was so much dust on it, it was clear it had been abandoned for a long time. Shockingly, there were countless experts gathered in front of the altar. They were numbered in at least the millions. Lord Heaven, Long Chen was startled. This group of people had all at least reached sea expansion, and there were dozens of people at the front with powerful auras. They were clearly foundation forging experts, and Lord Heaven was amongst them. Long Chen, you won't mind if we come to watch the fun, right? Laughed Lord Heaven. Of course I don't mind. Having this many people cheer for me is something I couldn't have even if I begged. Then, in a bit, remember to cheer loudly and wave some flags. That would be the most exciting, laughed Long Chen. Yu Shaoqian was speechless. These people were clearly examining Long Chen as they had never seen him before, but he actually began joking with them. Big brother Long Chen, I'll cheer you on. Someone waved their hand amongst the crowd. Long Chen looked and saw several familiar faces. They were Xiao Fei, Xiao Ling, and the others. But he didn't see the old tribe leader. Good brother. Long Chen gave him a thumbs up. It seemed Xiao Fei was leading the group of the Xiao tribe's experts. He had finally begun to bear that heavy responsibility. You should go up there now. Take advantage of this little remaining time to adjust your states, said Lord Heaven. His white eyes were a bit frightening, but his smile was kind. Long Chen nodded and bowed to him. He and Yu Shaoqian jumped onto the platform's pillars. Long Chen smiled at Yu Shaoqian and closed his eyes, focusing on bringing himself to his peak state. Both Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian were at the peak of Xiantian. As long as they wanted to, they could attack Sea expansion at any time. Right now, they had to relax themselves, making their hearts enter an empty state. One of the foundation forging experts behind Lord Heaven I looked at the two of them and said, "Lord Heaven, why did you have all of us come? Is it really just to cheer for these two children?" "Why not?" said Lord Heaven I with a smile. The elder was speechless. They were the various leaders of their tribes, foundation forging experts, and behind them were their elites. However, they had come to cheer for some Xiantian rookies? "Brother Feng, Lord Heaven I is just joking with you. He must have his own reasons." "Let's just watch," laughed another tribe leader. Lord Heaven I smiled. Lines began to circulate within his white eyes, and it was like he could see through each of their hearts. "I know everyone's time is precious, but I still took the risk of gathering everyone here despite the weakening of defenses. That's naturally not just to play around. It's all because of the ancestors' final words before ascending." They were startled, and one of them said, "The dragon swims through the mortal world, the immemorial revives, lightning breaks the sky, the end of the 10 worlds?" The younger experts didn't quite understand what they were talking about. In fact, even some of the younger tribe leaders didn't know. But the seniors looked at Long Chen with shock. "Could it be? It's too early to say anything for sure. It's similar, but not entirely the same. We'll be able to see the proof soon, so calling everyone here to watch isn't a bad thing," said Lord Heaven I. The tribe leaders immediately stopped complaining. They no longer looked at that figure on the platform so lightly. The spiritual qi in the air was still growing denser. The mist was starting to condense practically into liquid, a sign that the spiritual qi had reached an inconceivable density. It was like the entire world was drowning in spiritual qi. Long Chen sat cross-legged on one of the stone pillars, keeping his heart empty. It was like his mind had escaped its cage and was floating throughout the entire immemorial path. It was a strange, mysterious feeling that he couldn't describe. It was like he was a god overlooking this world. He didn't know that when he entered that state, the dust on the stone pillars slowly fell, and countless ancient runes began to awaken as if they were absorbing some mysterious energy. Long Chen felt empty, as if he didn't exist, as if he were one with the world. The empty Tao heart, a state of no-me? Lord Heaven I nodded slightly. The other tribe leaders were all startled, because even they were unable to reach such a state. That was an even deeper cultivation state than meditation. Long Chen didn't know about their shock. In this mysterious state, he felt completely relaxed, like a fetus in the womb. Because he didn't try to look at anything, he saw more than ever. But this kind of scene was indistinct. All he saw was the general shape of the immemorial path. For paths had all been severed. The center of the original cross-shaped path had vanished, resulting in each path being unable to reach the center any longer. Not only did he see that general shape, but he also sensed countless auras. Suddenly, Long Chen felt an extremely familiar aura, and he hastily focused on looking. But as soon as he did that, he suddenly found the scene disappearing, as if everything had been a dream. He was still sitting on that pillar. "It's Yijiqiu. It's definitely her." Long Chen was sure he had sensed her aura. "All right, the spiritual qi has reached its peak. You can decide who wants to attack Sea expansion first," said Lord Heaven I. On one of the other 4 paths, a woman was standing alone at the peak of a mountain. This was the Northern Source's trial path. The mountain beneath her feet was covered in ice. A verdant forest had originally been here, but it was now a land of ice. Snow constantly circulated around her. She was grand and beautiful, like a goddess of ice. Her eyes suddenly opened. Those pupils were icy cold, but within that iciness, a trace of warmth appeared. "It's him." She looked in a certain direction, her gaze seeming to be able to pierce through space. A face appeared in her mind, one that was a bit naughty, but one that was extremely warm when it smiled. "Senior Apprentice Sister Jiqiu, the spiritual qi has reached its peak. You can advance to Sea expansion now." shouted a distant woman wearing the same white robes as her. Alright, you can go too. The immortal condensing pillars have benefits and drawbacks. Don't force yourself. Yi Zhiqiu nodded, looking into the distance. She once more closed her eyes. Snow began to dance around her, and an icy aura soared into the sky. Hearing Lord Heaven Eye's words, Long Chen and Yu Shaoqian opened their eyes. Looking at each other, Yu Shaoqian asked, "Together?" Long Chen shook his head. "No, you can go first." Yu Shaoqian nodded and closed her eyes. Her aura began to surge, as if a peaceful lake was starting to boil. It grew more and more intense, until her aura was raging against the sky. Long Chen stared closely. He wanted to see how others advanced to see expansion. Yu Shaoqian's aura was growing stronger and stronger, with everything within 100 miles trembling from it. An illusory sea appeared behind her. It was 5 miles wide. The spiritual qi around her was pouring into it. Heavens, it's already so big at the start. Once she steps into sea expansion, won't it be enough to frighten someone to death? The sea expansion experts were all shocked. The initial sea of a sea expansion expert was normally only 300 meters. 1,500 meters would make someone a genius. But even geniuses couldn't compare to Yu Shaoqian's initial sea. This sea was a projection of her dantian. As she used her dantian's power, its image automatically appeared before her. The initial sea and her dantian were linked. Their energy was the same. Once the initial sea behind her formed, spiritual qi began to be absorbed faster and faster by it. It gradually grew larger, growing by the mile every breath. What speed! The experts were startled again. Not only was her initial sea exceedingly large, but the speed at which it grew was many times faster than others. Yu Shaoqian's body began to automatically float in the air. The more her initial sea grew, the higher she floated. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, her initial sea was already 30 miles wide. The powerful fluctuations were constantly causing ripples in space. But once it reached that size, the speed at which it grew clearly lowered. Or perhaps it was just too big, and so any increase in size seemed insignificant. Through the aboriginal's shock, Long Chen was able to tell that this speed was amazing. But he was worried. He didn't have a dantian. How was he supposed to advance to see expansion? Thunder filled the air. Long Chen jumped, but when he looked up, he didn't see any change in the weather. The immemorial path's heavenly tribulations are linked. When nearby people undergo tribulation, it's common for others to sense it, explained Lord Heaven Eye. Long Chen nodded. The immemorial path truly was strange. He didn't know whether they would be disturbed because of others undergoing tribulation too close to them. As if seeing through Long Chen's thoughts, Lord Heaven Eye said, "You don't need to worry. Although you can hear the thunder of their tribulations, in reality, they're probably millions of miles away. It's like swimming in an ocean. You don't need to worry about the ripples from other people affecting you. Right now, she's in the midst of fully forming her initial sea. Once it forms a resonance with her dantian, her tribulation will fall. Although the immortal condensing pillar does have an isolation effect, you might get affected by her tribulation. To be safe, you can temporarily leave." These pillars on the immortal condensing platform had runic formations. No matter who sat on them, they would feel a strange force field around them. Through that force field, their absorption of spiritual qi would increase, but the lightning tribulation would also grow stronger. "It's fine. I'll stay right here. I can look after her like this." Long Chen smiled and declined his suggestion. His refusal caused quite a few people's eyes to turn a bit colder. Lord Heaven Eye was like a god to them, and Long Chen was being disrespectful. But Lord Heaven Eye merely smiled slightly without the least bit of anger. He continued watching Yu Shaoqian with everyone else. As her initial sea continued to grow, Long Chen closed his eyes, seeing if he could enter that mysterious state again. As he circulated the 9-star hegemon body art, his soul relaxed, and he gradually felt that feeling of being able to see the entire world. But what he saw was extremely indistinct. It was more like a sense, a kind of spiritual perception. As his spiritual perception grew, he saw experts surrounded by lightning nearby. They were receiving the baptism of heavenly tribulation. It seemed they didn't have any experience and hadn't timed it properly. They had begun their breakthrough before the spiritual chi had reached its greatest density. Now, they had already finished expanding their chi and were undergoing tribulation. From the strength of their tribulations, it was possible to tell that their expanded chis weren't very large. Otherwise, the tribulations wouldn't be so weak. His spiritual perceptions spread further. Long Chen sensed more and more people absorbing spiritual chi and attacking chi expansion. Some were deep in the mountains, some were in the ruins, while some were sitting in the clouds. To sum it up, all the disciples that had entered the immemorial path were now attacking chi expansion. Excellent, this fellow should be Gu Yang. Long Chen sensed a familiar aura. He seemed to be able to see a dazzling bald head that could light up heaven and earth. Such a thing was probably something only Gu Yang possessed. Boom. Suddenly, Long Chen was woken by a powerful pressure. He opened his eyes to see that Yu Xiaoqian's initial chi had grown to a huge size of 3,000 miles. What he didn't know was that in his empty state, he hadn't felt the passing of time. 10 days had passed without him knowing. Only now did he see that Lord Heavenai and the other aboriginals were thousands of miles away, still watching them. Seeing that huge chi, other than Lord Heavenai, everyone was astonished. This was a true chi. A chi of 3,000 miles. Perhaps she has already reached the level of an immortal sprout from the immortal era, gulped one elder. The other experts were as astonished as him. They were under a curse here and were unable to rely on the sudden influx of spiritual chi to advance or cultivate. Such a huge initial chi was something they had only heard of in legends. Lord Heavenai shook his head. The immortal sprout standard is to have a 3,000-mile initial chi at the very beginning. She's far from that requirement. But this huge chi of hers is truly startling. Although it can't compare to those legendary immortal sprouts, her future prospects are unlimited. But this is just the start. The difficult part starts now. Lord Heavenai's expression was slightly grave. The larger the initial chi, the stronger the heavenly tribulation. Those were the laws of the heavenly Daos. That was why the immortal condensing platform was a double-sided blade. Yu Xiaoqian's veil had been destroyed. She suddenly found that she was starting to lose control of her chi. She had been worried that she wouldn't be able to expand her chi large enough, so she had gone all out. However, now her chi had reached an immense size, such an immense size that it was out of her control. She also knew what the concept of a 3,000-mile initial chi meant. She was the first one to reach this level since the original devil race had declined. If she didn't fall, she would become the strongest expert of the declined original devil race. She was pale with terror now. She didn't dare to call her initial chi back into her dantian. Once she did, she would immediately be sensed by the heavenly Daos, and her heavenly tribulation would fall upon her. Its power would be beyond her imagination. Don't be afraid. If the heavens collapse, I'll be there to help you hold them up. A voice suddenly rang out. It wasn't loud, but it filled her with warmth. Yu Xiaoqian looked at Long Chen. He was still sitting on his pillar, a faint smile on his face. He gave her a victorious gesture. For some unknown reason, seeing his smile made her terror lessen a great deal. Long Chen's smile was full of confidence, confidence that increased her own confidence. Taking a deep breath, she slowly formed hand seals. The chi behind her slowly calmed and began to surge into her dantian. She began to glow, and her heavenly Tao runes automatically appeared around her. An innate rank 3 Celestial's heavenly Tao runes. It's unknown how much of the heavenly tribulation's power they can block, said one elder. It would be too regretful for such a genius to fall to heavenly tribulation. As she drew her chi into her dantian, everything was calm and steady. That showed how steady her heart was. It took a full 2 hours for her huge chi to completely return to her dantian. Once the last bit of power entered her body, a majestic aura surged into the sky. Thunder filled the air. Boundless tribulation clouds condensed in the sky, covering an area of 10,000 miles. Everyone's expressions turned pale as paper. What a terrifying aura. This pressure is on the same level as when we advanced to foundation forging, cried the tribe leaders. This pressure made them think of how they had narrowly managed to survive their own foundation forging tribulations. The tribulation clouds turned the world dark. The center of the tribulation clouds was over Yu Shaoqian, and it was constantly revolving. As the tribulation clouds revolved, energy condensed within them. The pressure was growing stronger and stronger. Some of the sea expansion experts even found it hard to breathe. They had also survived their sea expansion tribulations, and the majority of them had already reached the mid-sea expansion realm. But such a terrifying heavenly tribulation still made them tremble. Heavens, what is Long Qin doing? Why isn't he activating the immortal condensing pillar's barrier to block the lightning? Does he not know how to? The Stone Tribe's experts saw that Long Qin was now standing on his pillar with his hands clasped behind his back. He was completely ignoring this terrifying tribulation. Long Qin, quickly activate the barrier. Otherwise, you'll be struck by lightning and killed, shouted one of the men from the Stone Tribe that Long Qin had drunk with. As soon as he shouted, Shirtsong slapped him on the back of his head. What are you spouting at this time? To say that he'll die during tribulation? Are you cursing him? Tribulation was already a dangerous situation. To say that someone would die during it was a curse. Stop shouting. The place Long Qin is at is within the heavenly tribulation. He can't hear your voice over the heavens pressure, said the Stone Tribe's leader. The rumbling suddenly reached a peak, shaking heaven and earth, before suddenly becoming silent. Then a torrent of lightning crashed down. This torrent of lightning horrified all the aboriginals, as it was completely different from when they underwent tribulation. This was no ordinary thunder force. Each drop of lightning was a lightning rune, and when they crashed to the ground, smoke would come out and the ground would be charred. The heavenly tribulation was supposed to be the weakest at the beginning. But even now that they had advanced to sea expansion, they wouldn't be able to last an incense stick's worth of time against this tribulation before dying. This terrifying torrent of lightning was just the first wave of Yu Shaoqian's tribulation. All their hearts sank in worry. A destructive aura filled the air. Yu Shaoqian stood in the air. A faint layer of light shone over her body. The lightning was blocked by that barrier, unable to harm her. That caused everyone to sigh with relief. If she was panicked at the first wave of lightning, then she would definitely fail in the end. That was something none of them wanted to see. Now that they saw Yu Shaoqian was easily blocking this torrent of lightning, they looked toward Long Qin. What? Everyone was startled to see Long Qin directly allow the tempest of lightning to land on his body. He seemed incredibly relaxed and indifferent. Monster! Even the foundation forging experts were shocked. Perhaps this lightning wouldn't be able to cause much damage to them, but they couldn't just allow the lightning to land on them forever without being injured. Long Qin bathed in the lightning. This little bit of thunder force was no different from ordinary rain to him. In fact, it was Lei Long that was growing uneasy, wanting to charge out. It was like a hungry beast that had encountered a fat sheep. But Long Qin didn't allow it to run amok. That would affect Yu Shaoqian's tribulation, and he didn't dare to cause any ripples in case the tribulation noticed him. So he simply allowed the lightning to fall on him as a taste for Lei Long. This thunder force wasn't enough food to even get stuck between Lei Long's teeth. It became more and more uneasy, but Long Qin refused to release it. However, Long Qin said that he would allow it to eat its fill soon. Only then did it calm back down. Bathed in the lightning, Long Qin suddenly sensed many other auras through the tribulation. The countless experts in the immemorial path were undergoing tribulation. Because they were all undergoing tribulation at the same time, Long Qin sensed several familiar auras. But he couldn't determine their exact location. He could only vaguely sense the power of their tribulations. He sensed Shui Yu, Yu Changhao, and Huang Junmo's auras. They were also undergoing tribulation, and the intensity of it was not weaker than Yu Shaoqian's. That startled Long Qin. It seemed they had also run into their own fortuitous encounters. The existence known as karmic luck was too difficult to describe. The most startling thing was that he sensed other unfamiliar auras whose tribulations were just as strong as Shui Yu and the others. It seemed he had underestimated the other experts. Many of them were low-key and waiting patiently. Their light had been drowned out by the light of others. But most importantly, they intentionally concealed their power. This way, they wouldn't be noticed as easily as other experts, and they could grow easier. But now that they were undergoing tribulation, they had revealed their fangs. He sensed quite a few extremely powerful tribulations. This meant that the eastern wasteland had actually been hiding several powerful experts. It was just unknown what kind of people they were. The lightning rain continued for over 2 hours before buzzing filled the air. The rain grew more and more concentrated, more and more powerful, in the end becoming huge beads the size of fists that mercilessly smashed down. The experts watching all felt a chill. These lightning beads were like cannonballs shooting from the sky. If they allowed just one to land on their bodies, then even sea expansion experts would be at least heavily injured upon being struck, if not killed outright. The light barrier around Yu Xiaoqian's body was becoming unsteady under the attack of the lightning beads. She clearly didn't have it as easy as before. But that light barrier didn't shatter, so she was still out of danger. Looking at Long Chen, the others were speechless. He was still standing there like he didn't even sense the lightning beads smashing into his body. Big brother Long Chen is amazing. He can ignore such terrifying lightning. Xiao Fei's eyes were full of worship as he stared at Long Chen. In all the Xiao tribe's experts' eyes, Long Chen was a true king. Perhaps only they knew just how strong and domineering Long Chen was. The tribulation clouds suddenly changed once more. They had originally been static, but now they began to revolve. As they revolved, the lightning beads disappeared. Spears of lightning began shooting down from the sky. The true heavenly tribulation starts now. Each of the lightning spears was 30 meters long and contained a fierce, destructive aura. They could kill any of the sea expansion experts watching. Yu Xiaoqian's expression finally turned grave. She formed hand seals, and her heavenly Tao runes wrapped around her. She no longer passively defended, but began launching attacks. Some of her 3-colored heavenly Tao runes formed a 30-meter barrier around her, while the rest formed thousands of flying swords that attacked the lightning spears. When the lightning spears and flying swords clashed, they instantly exploded. But each destroyed lightning spear was replaced with another. As for Yu Xiaoqian, when her runic flying swords were destroyed, she drew out more of the heavenly Tao rune's energy to form new swords. An awe-inspiring clash of swords and spears took place in the sky. The lightning spears were like rain crashing toward the earth. But Yu Xiaoqian was able to fight against them. Her initial Ci had already formed, so the Qi Ci in her Dantian had grown by 1,000 times. This was the most terrifying part of Ci expansion. Compared to before, she had 1,000 times more spiritual Qi. This immense consumption was nothing for her. Seeing that Yu Xiaoqian was still able to hold on under such a terrifying tribulation, the others were full of praise. They hoped to personally see a supreme genius with a Qi Ci of 3,000 miles pass her tribulation. They no longer felt the slightest dissatisfaction at being summoned by Lord Heavenite. Just being able to see such a shocking tribulation was worth it. Feeling this terrifying pressure and was a valuable experience for them. It would be helpful to their own future tribulations. Heavens! Suddenly, one of the stone race's women let out a startled cry. Previously, everyone had been focused on Yu Xiaoqian. But now that they looked toward Long Chen, they jumped in shock. Long Chen was still completely at ease. That woman had just seen a lightning spear crash onto Long Chen's body, so she hadn't been able to hold back her startled cry. Everyone's gazes turned to Long Chen. Personally seeing a lightning spear explode upon striking Long Chen, their eyes almost popped out. That calm expression of his caused their hearts to pound. That's way too monstrous. Quite a few people gulped. This was no ordinary thunder force, but the 9 heavens tribulation thunder force. This level of lightning tribulation wasn't something Long Chen had to dodge. In fact, its power greatly dissatisfied Lei Long. It was like someone about to die from dehydration was only allowed to drink water drop by drop. But there was no way around that. Long Chen didn't dare to expose himself during Yu Xiaoqian's lightning tribulation. The slightest fluctuation might be sensed by the heavenly Daos. Time passed bit by bit. They were shocked to see that this tribulation endured for a whole day and night, and the lightning spears only grew stronger. From their original 30 meters, they had grown to 300 meters each. Each attack was powerful, and the scope had also increased. The aboriginals had no choice but to go further back. Long Chen was like a mountain the entire time. No matter how strong the tribulation grew, he was still so indifferent. The experts watching were numb now. They felt like all their shock had already been used up. No one bothered with the monster known as Long Chen. Instead, they just stared at Yu Xiaoqian, who was standing in the air, facing this heavenly tribulation. They wished for her to pass this tribulation. Then they would have borne witness to the birth of a legend. Long Chen was also watching Yu Xiaoqian closely. The thunder force was growing even stronger, and Long Chen was no longer able to sense other people's tribulations. He was completely focused on Yu Xiaoqian. Suddenly, the lightning spears disappeared. Those tribulation clouds shook, and lightning beasts charged down at Yu Xiaoqian. Each of those lightning beasts was like a small mountain. Heavens, what's going on? These aboriginals had never seen lightning tribulation transform like this. Seeing these lightning beasts, Long Chen's eyes narrowed. This was the true challenge. Whether Yu Xiaoqian could succeed depended on this moment. The lightning beasts came in all kinds of forms. Some were birds, some were beasts, and some were even fish. It was a veritable sea of beasts. Seeing these innumerable lightning beasts charging toward her, Yu Xiaoqian's heart turned cold. She could feel just how powerful each one of them was. Without her core energy, it didn't seem like she would be able to defeat them. There were so many of them as to cause despair. Don't be afraid. Just do your best, and if you can't hold on, I'll take action. Long Chen's voice rang in her ears. Even at this time, his voice was so calm. Even she didn't understand why hearing his voice made her confidence increase by so much. The runes around Yu Xiaoqian formed a huge figure that stood like a god behind her. Her sword slashed forward. The illusory figure mimicked her movements. Its terrifying power destroyed the first few lightning beasts, transforming them into lightning runes. How powerful! The aboriginals' jaws dropped. This endless sea of lightning beasts had made them despair. The power of this tribulation had already surpassed their foundation-forging tribulations. Who could survive this? Seeing Yu Xiaoqian kill 3 of them in one move, they cheered. There's a hope. But Long Chen didn't cheer. Instead, he was worried. This magical art was Yu Xiaoqian's strongest move. She had relied on this move to allow them to escape from the flame devil. She had now condensed her qi. However, the power of this figure was weaker than when she had used it before. He estimated that it had around 70% of its original power. If Yu Xiaoqian could use her core energy, handling these lightning beasts wouldn't have been too difficult. But her core energy was exhausted and couldn't be recovered here. Even if her core energy had been present, she wouldn't have dared to undergo tribulation in this world, because she wouldn't have been able to conceal her core energy under the heavenly tribulation. Right now, Yu Xiaoqian only possessed 70% of her peak combat power. Thus, these lightning beasts posed a deadly threat to her. Yu Xiaoqian's sword danced, and the lightning beasts were killed one by one, unable to stop her sword. However, their number only continued to increase. Yu Xiaoqian was in a crisis now, being completely submerged by a sea of lightning beasts. Boom! Suddenly, Yu Xiaoqian's sword pointed toward the sky. Countless ripples flowed out of its tip, forcing back the closest lightning beasts. She used that opportunity to escape their enclosure and continue killing. But there were still too many of them. Yu Xiaoqian was quickly surrounded once more, and she had no choice but to release her magical art again. Fortunately, having condensed her initial qi, she had plenty of spiritual yuan. Otherwise, doing this twice would have completely exhausted her energy. Although it was extremely dangerous, Yu Xiaoqian managed to ensure that she wouldn't be defeated. She went all out killing these lightning beasts. Seeing her sweat as she struggled against these beasts made Long Chen's heart ache. but unless it reached the point of no return, he didn't dare interfere. Although his own cultivation base hadn't reached that realm yet, he was aware of the conventional cultivation path. Once a cultivator broke through to sea expansion and condensed their initial sea, it would bring down the baptism of heavenly tribulation. This was a trial and also a law. Only through the trial of the heavenly tribulation would the initial sea be accepted by the heavenly Daos and become the true Chi sea. If it wasn't able to accept the baptism of heavenly tribulation, the initial sea wouldn't have the world's approval and would quickly evaporate. Yu Shaoqian would once more fall back to the Xiantian realm, and it wasn't as easy as simply trying again. It would be many, many times more difficult for her to advance again. So unless Yu Shaoqian was on the verge of losing her life, he wouldn't interfere. He could only watch anxiously. There were many times where Yu Shaoqian was sent flying by a lightning beast and coughed up blood that he wanted to charge forward, but his rationality suppressed that urge. However, one thing comforted Long Qin. Although there was a sea of lightning beasts in the air now, there were no longer any new lightning beasts coming down from the sky. Shaoqian, there are only going to be this many lightning beasts. Once you kill them all, you'll pass. Encouraged Long Qin. Yu Shaoqian finally had a target. Her morale surged, and she continued using her magical arts to kill the lightning beasts. This battle took a long time. Over half a day, the lightning beasts' numbers fell. The last one was finally killed by Yu Shaoqian. Good dash, everyone cheered when the last one was killed, but their cheering was quickly cut short by a heaven-shaking roar. A huge, mile-long lightning beast descended from the sky. Its lightning runes were glaringly bright, making it look like the sun. What? Even Lord Heaven Eye's expression changed. This lightning beast's aura was too terrifying. Despair appeared in Yu Shaoqian's eyes. The intensity of this lightning tribulation was abnormal. It was endless, and it refused to allow her to live. As she examined the huge lightning beast, she suddenly looked at herself and bitterly smiled. Long Qin, I thought I was smart, but I think I've been sensed by the heavenly Daos. When this lightning beast appeared, Yu Shaoqian felt her exhausted core energy release a slight but strange fluctuation. That made her guess that tricking the heavenly Daos wasn't as easy as she had thought. Don't be afraid. Our plan won't fail. It's just a slight change. I have plenty of experience with handling this kind of lightning beast, and I'll tell you its weak points, shouted Long Qin. Long Qin had fought against lightning for so long now, especially tribulation lightning. He was an expert in this, and he had also seen all kinds of lightning beasts. His knowledge in this aspect was enough to compile an encyclopedia. Most importantly, this lightning beast was one he had personally seen before. It was a huge scorpion with a long tail. Where its pincers were supposed to be were a pair of huge claws. This was what had appeared in the end during his meridian opening tribulation. Although their size was completely different, their shape was the exact same. They were clearly one breed. At that time, he had almost died to it. It was only with Lei Long's help that he had managed to defeat it in the end. Once he had defeated it, the primal chaos space had allowed him to seal it so that Lei Long could refine it, and that was what had allowed his lightning serpent to transform into a lightning python. Yu Shaoqian charged toward the lightning scorpion. She appeared above it, and it instinctively charged up. But as soon as it did, Yu Shaoqian stopped. The scorpion's stomach was wide open to her. Devil heart pierce. Yu Shaoqian's sword stabbed forward, but it landed on nothing. At first, people were startled. But then the huge figure behind Yu Shaoqian also stabbed its sword forward, striking a certain glowing part of the lightning scorpion's abdomen. Boom! In front of everyone's wide-open eyes, that incredibly powerful scorpion shattered into pieces from one attack. A success! Everyone cheered. The tribulation clouds slowly condensed, forming a huge rune. This was the last step. This rune represented the approval of the heavenly Daos. As long as Yu Shaoqian absorbed this rune, her initial sea would become completely stable, and she would become a true sea expansion expert. Just as Yu Shaoqian was full of joy and preparing to accept this rune, rumbling filled the entire immemorial path. Every sea expansion expert present couldn't help but vomit a mouthful of blood as a terrifying shockwave struck them. Lord Heavenai looked up at the sky with shock. Countless lines began to circulate within his white eyes, and inconceivable words came out of his mouth. Experts from another world broke through the dome of the sky and forcibly sent 4 people here. Everyone was horrified. How was that possible? Who could possibly possess enough power to break the laws of the heavens and send someone into the immemorial path? Xiao Qian, quickly absorb your rune, shouted Long Chen. Only now did Xiao Qian react and hastily fly up into the sky. She didn't need to wait for the rune to descend upon her. She could take the initiative to merge with it. Just at this moment, a voice rang out. Undergoing tribulation with a bunch of ants is practically an insult. That voice was icy, its tone seeming to say that only he was supreme. This voice resounded throughout the air. The aboriginals were all horrified and looked up at the sky. 4 figures were standing above the heavens in the center of the immemorial path. Their bodies were covered in flames, so it was impossible to see them clearly. They were like gods above the heavens. Don't bother with it too much. Gods and ants exist in the same world. There's nothing to be done. Now that the heavenly Tao energy here has been activated by the ants, it's perfect for us to undergo tribulation. Don't waste any more time. Another arrogant voice rang out. Boom. 4 incomparably powerful auras erupted. The immemorial path had begun calming down as people's tribulations ended, but now it became chaotic once more. Furthermore, their auras were even grander than when those countless experts had been undergoing their tribulations. Are they even human? How could they possess such terrifying auras? Almost all the experts within the immemorial path had already finished their tribulations. They looked up at the sky in horror. These auras are still in the Xiantian realm. But how could they be so powerful? Are they gods? These 4 people's auras caused the immemorial path to rumble. Endless tribulations clouds gathered over them, making it look like the world was ending. Xiao Qian, careful. Long Chen suddenly shouted. Just as Xiao Qian touched her rune, heaven and earth's energy began to rage. Her rune flew toward the tribulation clouds, toward the 4 of them. Xiao Qian panicked. This was something she had won through immense danger. If this rune was taken away, all her efforts would be wasted. Thus, she went to grab the rune. The tribulation clouds continued to condense. Xiao Qian's body shook, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood that dyed her robes red. But she grabbed her rune, refusing to allow it to fly away. Oh, there's still an ant. Hee, still lacking the final step? Stupid. One of those godlike people sneered. They continued releasing their auras, preparing for their tribulations. They didn't care the slightest bit about Xiao Qian. Friends, can you be generous and pause your tribulations for a moment? Let my friend grab her heavenly Tao rune, or all her previous efforts will be wasted, said Long Chen to those figures in the air. Long Chen had activated the 9-star hegemon body art, and each of his words was shouted using his immense spiritual yuan. His voice rang throughout the sky. Ants don't have the qualifications to speak. Don't waste our time. If you irritate me, be careful of me destroying you in passing, said an icy voice. Xiao Qian had a hold on her rune, but it was still being drawn into the tribulation clouds. She did her best to hold on. She was the scion of the original devil race, their only hope of changing their future. Long Chen was panicked and infuriated. At this moment, he couldn't help Xiao Qian. Once her heavenly Tao rune was infected by his aura, it would dissipate to nothing. Original ancestor, please, hear your descendants call. Bestow me my bloodline power. Xiao Qian's face was pale. She had no core energy left, but she forcibly summoned her bloodline power. The rune in her hand suddenly escaped the pull of the tribulation clouds and merged into Xiao Qian's body. Xiao Qian immediately collapsed from the sky. A pair of arms caught her. Her face was pale without the slightest bit of color. The light in her eyes had dimmed a great deal. Xiao Qian, Long Chen felt a burst of pain. You succeeded, Long Chen. I'm happy. Xiao Qian was exhausted, but she was still delighted. Long Chen nodded. He suddenly flew over to the Xiao tribe's people and handed Xiao Qian to Xiao Ling. Then he charged back up the immortal condensing pillar. Long Chen, what are you planning on doing? It's not a good time for you to undergo tribulation. Their terrifying tribulation will affect you, shouted Lord Heaven Eye. That's fine. If they want to play, then I'll accompany them. Let's see just whose tribulation will be affecting whose. Long Chen slapped his hand on the immortal condensing pillar. The entire pillar shattered. In front of everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Long Chen absorbed all the pillar's runes into his body. Has he gone crazy? The seniors felt like their eyes were about to pop out. As long as the immortal condensing pillar's runes were activated, it would have an effect. However, there had been no record of anyone trying to absorb those runes into their bodies. Who knew what the terrifying consequences would be? This wasn't any different than suicide. Big brother Long Chen is furious. Xiao Fei clenched his fists. Xiao Ling helped Yu Xiaoqian into a chair. Although she had managed to snatch her heavenly Dao rune and truly entered Sea Expansion, she was incredibly weak now. After absorbing all the immortal condensing pillar's spirit-gathering runes, Long Chen soared into the sky. Idiots, I'll let you see just who the ant is. Long Chen's furious roar resounded throughout the sky. Boom. As Long Chen fully activated the 9-star He-Gem body art, the world's spiritual qi poured toward him. Rumbling came from Long Chen's body as though shackles had been broken. A terrifying aura soared into the sky. As Long Chen broke through, the world was silent for a moment. Very soon, the entire immemorial path began to quiver as a destructive aura filled the heavens. Is this the end of the world? Sensing that destructive aura, people found that no matter where they were under a terrifying pressure. Their bodies involuntarily quivered. Some people had already dug their way into the ground to conceal themselves. The fury of the heavens desired to destroy this entire world. All the people in the immemorial path were terrified. Many of them didn't know what was going on, but they all knew something horrifying was happening. Those 4 figures were still immersed within lightning. At this moment, the lightning around them began to surge as if it had been affected by something. It was no longer steady. Heavenly tribulation, don't make me look down on you. Let me see just how much power you have. Long Chen released his powerful will as well, one that wished to fight against the heavenly Daos. As if hearing Long Chen's provocation, the heavenly tribulation in the whole immemorial path surged toward him. It was absolutely endless. Even those 4 figures were enveloped by his tribulation. Brat, you're courting death, shouted one of the 4. Those 4 were wrapped in flames, being surrounded by some kind of formation that made it so they couldn't move. They could only undergo their tribulations within the flames. Long Chen's actions had infuriated them. They considered this a provocation from him, and they were unable to accept such a thing. The ones courting death are you, sneered Long Chen. The tribulation clouds around him grew denser, their scope could no longer be described. They covered the entire world in darkness, and their thickness was over 100 miles. Long Chen even sensed the surrounding space solidify. Even like this, Long Chen still wasn't satisfied. He suddenly took the initiative to charge into the lightning tribulation and punch it. Boom! A terrifying astral wind blew apart the tribulation's clouds. Long Chen continued punching, and the condensing tribulation clouds were pulverized by him. The aboriginals below felt their scalps turn numb. Long Chen had definitely gone crazy. Was he afraid that the heavenly tribulation wouldn't be strong enough, so he was intentionally provoking it? Since ancient times, every person revered the heavens. Each time they underwent tribulation, they were careful and respectful. Who dared to take the initiative to attack the heavenly tribulation? As expected, following Long Chen's actions, the heavens were enraged. A terrifying destructive will descended, and people were horrified to see cracks appear in the ground. Energy poured out of them and into the tribulation clouds. All the immemorial path's experts were dumbfounded. Whether it was the eastern, western, southern, northern, or even the central section, they all sensed that terrifying phenomenon. With all of heaven and earth's energy gathering, the heavens were blocking any form of mental probing. Other than the closest aboriginals, no one else could see what was happening any longer. All they knew was that something incredibly major was happening inside the immemorial path. Seeing this, Lord Heaven Eye suddenly ordered everyone to retreat further. Lord Heaven Eye, if we retreat any further, we won't be able to see anything at all, grumbled Xiao Fei. At this distance, they weren't even able to see Long Chen's figure anymore. The surrounding heavenly Tao energy was blocking their line of sight. Stop wasting words. Not being able to see Long Chen for now is better than Long Chen never being able to see us ever again. This level of heavenly tribulation is heaven-defying. Whoever wants to live better retreat, shouted Lord Heaven Eye. Boom. Just as they were retreating, the void suddenly shook. Endless lightning filled the spot Long Chen was at. Heaven and earth rumbled and lightning filled the sky. From a distance, it looked like the spot Long Chen was at had been submerged in a sea of lightning. The immemorial path quivered. Lord Heaven Eye and the others stood far off in the distance, unable to speak in the face of that terrifying lightning sea. Xiao Fei began to sweat and no longer grumbled about not being able to see. Anyone who wasn't blind would be able to clearly see this terrifying lightning sea. Even from such a distance, they could feel the berserk energy within the lightning sea. Even foundation forging experts sensed the threat of death from that lightning. If they entered this tribulation, they would definitely die. There's not the slightest bit of life energy in this lightning. On a fundamental scale, it refuses to give anyone a path to life. With its aura being entirely destructive, this is no longer heavenly tribulation, but heavenly punishment, cried a shocked elder. Heavenly tribulation was just a law to wash out the weak. No matter how dazzling and intense the lightning tribulation, it always left behind a trace of life energy. But Long Chen's heavenly tribulation was filled entirely with a berserk destructive will. It was clearly intent on obliterating him. Is this the result of Long Chen provoking the heavenly tribulation? Lord Heaven Eye shook his head. Heavenly tribulation is a part of the heavenly Taos. It has no life, nor does it have any emotions to speak of. How could it have become angry? Long Chen has simply intentionally broken the heavenly tribulations process, forcing it to advance to the next level while not having released its previous power. That's making its power superimpose. But even so, laws are just laws, and this kind of situation should never occur. This heavenly tribulation is fundamentally not allowing Long Chen to pass. Lord Heaven Eye's eyes were locked onto that sea of lightning. There was a figure bathed in that lightning, full of an undefeatable will that was clashing against the will of the heavenly Taos. Yu Shaoqian had consumed medicinal pills and recovered a bit of her energy. Although she was still pale, she could now stand. She nervously looked at that figure. She knew that Long Chen was doing this because of her. He was getting revenge on those 4 figures, making them pay a price for their actions. The feeling of being protected was a warm one, but she was also incredibly worried. Long Chen's temper was too explosive. This was far too dangerous. The first wave of the tribulation is already so powerful. How strong will it grow later? The thunder force was like a sea, its lightning runes surging like the tide, rumbling with heaven and earth. This kind of scene was something that they hadn't dared to imagine ever in their lives. As Long Chen's heavenly tribulation erupted, those 4 people wrapped in the flames were also affected. They were startled to find that their own tribulations were growing stronger because of Long Chen's influence. An ant's fury is laughable. Did you think that by infuriating the heavenly tribulation, you could bring us down with you? Foolish to the pinnacle, laughed one of them. It was unknown just which of the 4 had spoken these words. These 4 were extremely strange. Ever since they had broken through the void to appear here, each one of them had a whirlpool above their heads. Those were like 4 portals that had allowed them to break into this world. Breaking through the barrier between worlds and sending 4 experts here to undergo tribulation was a shocking ability, one that was hard to imagine. Even an idiot would know that these 4 had to possess terrifying backgrounds. However, Long Chen didn't give a damn about their origins. In order to show off their arrogance, these 4 hadn't given a damn about Yu Shaoqian's life or death. In the end, Yu Shaoqian had exhausted a huge amount of her blood essence to snatch back her heavenly Dao rune. Her miserable state still burned his heart. If they wanted to play, then they had better be ready to play. He had absorbed all the immortal condensing pillars runes, as well as actively attacked the tribulation. This heavenly tribulation's intensity was beyond belief now. Although this was impetuous and not a smart decision, Long Chen had never thought himself to be a wise sage. All he knew was that whoever hurt the people by his side would have to pay a price. That was the typical conduct of a fool, but Long Chen had always acted like that. They seemed to be talking. The aboriginals could only barely sense some fluctuations from them. Their voices were completely drowned out by the booming thunder of the tribulations. Long Chen seemed to not hear the mysterious expert's words. Flying higher into the air, he suddenly reached toward the sky and pulled. A whirlpool appeared over his head, and it instantly grew. Endless lightning crashed down on him. What? Even Lord Heaven-Eye jumped in shock. Instead of doing something to block the lightning, Long Chen acted like he still hadn't gotten his fill. He took the initiative to absorb the thunder force pouring out of the whirlpool. Lei Long cried out in delight. It crazily devoured all the thunder force pouring into Long Chen's body. It was like a bottomless pit, able to take in as much energy as available. In this manner, Long Chen allowed Lei Long to absorb thunder force faster than when it acted on its own. This kind of scattered thunder force wasn't like the lightning beasts. It was just simple lightning. With Long Chen's assistance, Lei Long quickly absorbed the huge sea of lightning in less than 2 hours. Heaven and earth returned to calm. The aboriginals were all dumbfounded. What was going on? The tribulation had been passed just like this? Hand over your energy. Long Chen shouted and suddenly charged into the tribulation clouds, attacking them with his fists. The lightning clouds had originally been brewing, but once Long Chen scattered a huge mass of them, they were even thicker than before when they regathered. As for the 4 mysterious experts wrapped in flames, the thunder force attacking them once more increased. Fool. Idiot. Incurable. Plebeian. Each one of the mysterious experts spat out a disdainful snort. All 4 of them were men. The 4 of them were truly terrifying. Even immersed in this lightning, they didn't have to take any action to block it. This level of thunder force was clearly nothing to them, so they looked down on Long Chen's actions. Lord Heaven-Eye, just who are they? Asked Xiao Fei. Everyone greatly wanted to know this. They are peerless geniuses. Their power has surpassed your imaginations. Perhaps only such people are worthy of supreme powers paying such an immense price to forcibly send them here to undergo tribulation. Lord Heaven-Eye sighed, a complicated expression on his face. His heaven eyes had clearly seen through some secrets. Boom. Suddenly, rumbling cut off their conversation. Lightning swords began to shoot down from the sky at Long Chen. Each one of them was huge, over 300 meters long. But Long Chen continued to tear into the sky. The huge whirlpool still existed above him, and he actually began to absorb those terrifying lightning swords. People felt like they were going crazy. They had never seen someone undergo tribulation like this. The lightning swords flooded toward Long Chen and were all absorbed by him. The 4 of them are also affected, shouted Xiao Fei. Everyone hastily looked to see the thunder force attacking the 4 of them had also transformed into lightning swords. Long Chen's tribulation was affecting them. Although they were up in the void and the distance between them was impossible to estimate, they were still affected. Long Chen ignored what was happening over there as his mood was getting better now. Lei Long was too amazing. No matter how much thunder force he fed it, it would absorb it and grow stronger. Long Chen knew that heavenly tribulation was weakest at the start. Therefore, this was the best time to absorb thunder force. He had to absorb as much as possible now before it grew to the point where he couldn't absorb it. The lightning swords eventually disappeared. The tribulation clouds above Long Chen's had actually linked together with the 4 experts' tribulation clouds. They formed one huge mass of tribulation clouds that covered the entire world. Originally, each of them was undergoing their own tribulation. But now the situation had suddenly changed. All their tribulation clouds had connected, and the pressure immediately grew by hundreds of times. "Retreat again!" shouted Lord Heaveneye. At this point, some of the sea expansion experts were quivering, feeling like they were about to be crushed. Within every inch of the immemorial path, experts were looking in horror at the central area. They were unable to see anything, but they could sense all the immemorial path's energy converging in that location. Terrifying fluctuations were spreading from there. This tribulation was too powerful, and it isolated all other auras. The other experts in the immemorial path could only tell something exceedingly terrifying was happening at the center of the immemorial path. However, they didn't dare to probe it. All of them had just endured their own tribulations. Many had been killed, and of those that had succeeded, the majority had only survived with half their lives. They didn't dare to do anything risky at this moment. They could only heal and sense what was happening. Suddenly, the tribulation clouds trembled. Endless lightning beasts began to fall from the sky, each of them 300 meters long and incomparably fierce. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.